everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another true crime video. Today's video has been highly requested and anticipated because, as I had mentioned in a previous video, the trial of Letecia Stauch has started this month, April of 2023, in case you're watching in the future, and we're talking about the first couple of days of the trial today. We're talking about it, we're reacting to it, we're reacting to some of the new information that's come out, and I'm ready to dig in to it with you guys now. This trial is anticipated to go for about 8 weeks, so I'm not going to make a video about every single day of the trial unless you want me to. So after you watch this video, if you liked the format, if you liked how I kind of break everything down, sometimes these trials can get very lengthy. Just in one day, it can be 8 or 9 hours of testimony. So sometimes people don't want to sit through those trials. I enjoy it, so I don't mind doing that. I like watching trials, but sometimes people don't want to. So if you like me reviewing and kind of wrapping everything up, let me know in the comment section and I will make a video about every day of the trial, but I won't make it like each day. I'll combine days to make things a little bit easier so there's not like 500 videos. So let me know that, but I just want to let everybody know in advance, if you're coming to watch this and you're wanting or expecting an unbiased view on Letecia Stauch, this is not the channel for you. This is not the video for you. I've been following this case since it happened in 2020. I was one of the first people to talk about it on YouTube. I hate her. Okay, I hate Letecia Stauch. I think she is one of the worst people to ever walk the face of the earth. Once you hear what she did to Gannon, like if you're not familiar with this case and you're like, well, how could you say that? Once you hear what she did to Gannon, and what she hasn't denied doing to Gannon, by the way, you'll understand what I mean. So you're not going to find in me the ability to give her the benefit of the doubt or to be empathetic or sympathetic to her at all in any way, shape, or form ever. So if that's what you want or that's what you're looking for, or if you're going to be disappointed when I absolutely rip her to shreds, click off. And honestly, if you're somebody who at this point, after everything we know, is ready or willing to give Letecia Stauch the benefit of the doubt, I probably don't want you here anyways. So you should go. You should absolutely go. But I'm going to give you a quick overview. So for the format of this video, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the case for those of you who maybe are new to the case or who, it's been a while since you've watched videos or read articles about it. I've also made about 3 or 4 videos on Letecia Stauch and Gannon Stauch, and I will link them in the description box if you want to watch those and catch up. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of the people, the place, the timeline, and then we're going to dive in to the trial. And I'm going to play you some clips from the trial, and the court footage is admittedly annoying because what you have is usually either one wide shot of the courtroom where you can barely see Letecia Stauch, and sometimes you can't see her at all, and there's reasons for that. We're going to talk about it. And sometimes you'll see like a sort of a half view of the courtroom and then a view of the judge's face, like side by side. You don't ever see, well, as far as I can tell from the trial, from what I've watched so far, you don't ever see who's testifying. You don't get any like close-ups on Letecia. She stays away from the camera as much as possible. And sometimes you can kind of see like the lawyers talking, but it's not super dynamic. So what I'm going to do is when I watch these clips with you, along with you, I'll keep myself on the screen so you can see me reacting in time to the clips and to what they're saying. And also I'll put up pictures of people that are being talked about or people who are talking during the trial in each specific clip to make it just, easier to watch and just not like kind of stagnant where we're just sitting there seeing half of Letecia's face as she tries to hide from the camera because she's trying to pretend she's ashamed of what she did, but I don't think she is, by the way. So yeah, like I said, quick overview, then we'll go over the trial and I'm going to give you my thoughts. I know this case very well, so I'm not really going to let anything slide. Before we dive in, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Magellan TV. Most of my loyal viewers already know that I love Magellan TV. Magellan TV is a documentary streaming service run by filmmakers, and these filmmakers are dedicated to bringing the finest high-quality documentaries to a global audience of active information seekers who are determined to know how the world works and how we got to where we are. And honestly, that sounds a lot like the people who watch my channel here on YouTube. It sounds a lot like me. And since you guys and me have so much in common and we usually like the same things, I definitely do think that you will love Magellan TV as well, because Magellan Magellan TV has thousands of entertaining and educational documentary films and series, and not only that, they add 15 to 20 hours of new content every single week, which is my favorite thing, because I already have a list of things that I want to watch on Magellan TV, and I love when the new content hits in the week, and I can go through it and sort of like pin the ones that I want to watch later. And those films and those series can be found in their new releases section. For instance, I want to tell you about a true crime series in the new releases section called Our Toughest Cases. And this series talks about specific crimes that have taken a toll on even the most experienced police officers and just sort of, stuck with them. This series has 6 episodes discussing different cases from all over the world. I watched all 6 this week. Actually, I watched them all the day before Easter because I was cleaning because we were having people over on Easter. I put my headphones in. I brought my phone around the house with me. Boom, boom. Like I got the cleaning done and I watched all 6 episodes. And since, today, in today's video, we're talking about Gannon Stauch, which for me has been one of my toughest cases, one of those cases that has stuck with me. I thought that this would be a great recommendation to give to you because honestly, this was a very, very good series. And I was actually so invested in one of the cases. I don't want to tell you which one because I don't want to spoil it, but I was so invested in one of those cases that I watched in that series. I want to cover it on my channel and find out more. Magellan TV has an extensive true crime collection, lots of great films and series. Like I talk about my favorite true crime series on Magellan TV all the time, Murder Maps. It's so freaking good. I'm sorry. You have to check it out. Like, you have to get Magellan TV to watch Murder Maps because you can watch all of these films and all of these series like Murder Maps, like Our Toughest Cases on Magellan TV by clicking the link in my description box so you can check Magellan TV out for yourself for 1 month completely free of charge, no strings attached. You can cancel whenever you want to, but I don't think that you're going to want to. And honestly, I can admit to you and myself, we all need a break from true crime from time to time. It's healthy to do that because it gets heavy, it gets hard, and when that happens, we also need to resist the urge to turn on, like the equivalent of junk food for your brain, which is reality television or just these mindless television scripted series that add nothing to your life. Like those are fine sometimes, but sometimes you want to be educated and entertained, and that's when you have to turn to Magellan TV because they don't just have true crime, they have great history, science, nature, travel content, and once again, that stuff is educational and entertaining, so you get to take a break from true crime, but you're also not just letting your mind turn to jello. So once again, click the link in the description box. Start your 1 month free trial with Magellan TV right now. Thank you so much to Magellan TV for sponsoring today's video. And let's dive in to talking about my least favorite person in the world, Letecia Stauch, or as we know her, Dr. T. Stauch. Okay, here's your quick overview portion. We've got the people, we've got the place, we've got the timeline, and kind of where we are at as far as what Letecia was doing, what she was claiming when the trial started. So Gannon Stauch was an 11-year-old boy who was living in Colorado Springs with his father, Eugene Albert Stauch. Now, Eugene Albert Stauch goes by Al, so that's what we're going to call him in this video and any videos that follow. And Al was a member of the Colorado Springs-based National Guard. Gannon also lived with his stepmother, 36-year-old Letecia Stauch. We're going to call Letecia a lot of things in this video. Sometimes we'll call her Letecia, sometimes I'll call her T, sometimes I'll call her Dr. T. Stauch, and that's kind of an inside joke going back to one of the videos where we talked about Letecia Stauch in a letter she wrote to the judge on her case, claiming that she was getting threats in her peanut butter and that the guards were abusing her and beating her up because she was in jail at this time, and all of this nonsense in this letter that she wrote the judge, and she signed it Dr. Letecia Stauch. So as a joke, we sometimes on this channel call her Dr. T or Dr. T. Stauch because, does she have her doctorate or her PhD? Yes, technically, but it's a long story. Okay, so technically she does have it, but it's a long story. We'll talk about it. Gannon also lived with his 8-year-old sister, Lena Stauch. Now, Gannon and Lena's biological mother, Landon, she lived in South Carolina. Obviously, Landon and Al Stauch used to be married. They separated. Al started dating Letecia Stauch. Al and Landon got a divorce. Al married Letecia, and for a while, Landon had full custody of Gannon and Lena. But then Al got full custody of the kids. And honestly, it seemed like that wasn't something that made his wife, Letecia, super happy, because as we'll find out as we go through this trial, Letecia really didn't like her husband's children, especially Gannon. So on Monday, January 27th, 2020, Al Stauch was out of town with the National Guard. He was in Oklahoma, I believe, for training. He was supposed to be there for 2 weeks or 10 days. And on that Monday, January 27th, Gannon was absent from school. And Letecia Stauch had exchanged text messages with her husband, Al, claiming that Gannon had been up much of the previous night with stomach issues. And she told Al, I'm going to keep Gannon home from school, and I'm going to call in to work as well so that I can stay with him while he's sick and home from school. Now, at that time, Letecia was working as an assistant teacher for School District 20 in Colorado Springs. If this case isn't bad enough, the idea that this woman worked with children, elementary school level children around Gannon's age, on a daily basis, that's terrifying. So on Monday, January 27th, around 6 p.m. that evening, Letecia called the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. A lot of people get confused and they say, El Paso, is this in Texas? No. El Paso is a county in Colorado. So Letecia called the El Paso County Sheriff's Office and she reported her stepson Gannon missing. She claimed that even though he'd been kept home from school sick, she'd allowed him to leave the house at sometime between 3:15 and 4 p.m. so he could go and hang out with a friend. He hadn't returned and she couldn't find him anywhere, right? Letecia said she left the house, she knocked on doors, she went to his friends' houses, but she couldn't find him anywhere and no one had seen him. Now, initially, Gannon was classified as a runaway because he'd left his cell phone at home, and the police had discovered that one of the last internet searches done on Gannon's cell phone had been, can my parents track my phone if it's turned off? But Gannon's status was upgraded from runaway to missing/endangered child 3 days later on January 30th. And this is because it wasn't long into this investigation when police started suspecting Letecia Stauch and saying, this lady is sus because she lies about everything. She lies constantly. She's told 3 to 4 different versions of this story about what happened again, and they keep getting wilder every time. And there's no evidence to back up any of them. It was actually very shortly after Gannon had gone missing that the recollections and timelines of his stepmother was called into question publicly by those of us watching the case unfold in real time. The horrible, mean armchair warriors, or the armchair detectives, as Letecia Stauch called us, because she hated us so bad because we were calling her out, right? The police were keeping things close to the chest, but people online, YouTube, Twitter, all of us were like, nah, she's not telling the truth. She's lying. Something's going on here. And she hated it so bad that she would just live on social media to tell people off. And when she had that one weird interview she did where her back was turned to the camera and, the interviewer was like, what would you like, Gannon to hear? If he could hear you, what is the one thing you would tell him? She's like, I would just tell him, I can't wait till you come home so I can prove all these people wrong. Literally, her 11-year-old missing stepson, she wants to tell him one thing, and that is come home so I can prove these people wrong, these mean people who are bullying me on the internet. But Letecia, her story and her version of events was also privately being called into question by law enforcement, especially after surveillance video from neighbors' houses showed a bunch of stuff that just didn't add up to what Letecia had claimed happened. So, for instance, the surveillance from one neighbor's house showed Letecia and Gannon leaving their house at around 10:16 a.m. on January 27th. Remember, Gannon's stomach hurts. He's supposed to be home from school that day, but they're leaving the house at 10:16 a.m. And they don't get back, or at least Letecia isn't seen pulling back into her driveway until around 2:20 p.m. And it looked as if she arrived home alone based on the surveillance footage. It looked like she arrived home without Gannon. Now, since then, law enforcement officials have claimed that they definitely do believe Gannon did arrive home with Letecia at that time. He just got out on the other side of the car and we couldn't see him on the surveillance footage. But during the roughly 4 hours that they were gone, Letecia is seen on surveillance at a Petco located about 20 miles away from her house, even though there was another Petco located much closer. And at this store, Letecia made 2 purchases. She made one purchase at 11:22 a.m. and another at 1:22 p.m. at the same store 20 miles away from her house. Gannon is not seen in either of these surveillance videos inside Petco, and it's unknown where he was at the time, probably in the car. But there is some activity on Gannon's cell phone during those 4 hours. So at around 10:37 a.m., a text was sent from Gannon's phone to the phone of someone named Harley Hunt. Harley is Letecia's daughter from a previous relationship, and she was also living at the house with Gannon and Lena and Al and Letecia, and in 2020 she was 17 years old. So the text message said, quote, "Tecia left phone at home. If you need her, text me," end quote. And investigators would later find this to be very odd because they knew from looking at Letecia's online activity that if there was one thing Letecia Stauch loved, it was being on the internet and using her cell phone. She was constantly on her cell phone. She would never leave it at home. But that day, Monday, January 27th, the day Gannon went missing, she did. So Gannon's father, Al, also sent Gannon a text message around noon, and Al didn't get a response to that message until 1:21 p.m. And the message that Al received at 1:21 was either from Gannon or from someone pretending to be Gannon, because 1:21 p.m. is just 1 minute before Letecia is seen walking into the Petco store to make her second purchase of the day. So it could have either been Gannon sending the message or Letecia. And basically the message was like, well, can I play this video game on my Switch, or can I play Zelda or something? I forget exactly what Gannon or whoever was pretending to be Gannon asked. And Al Stauch responded, no, not today, because at that point Gannon was grounded from his electronics, from his video games. Now, at 1:43 p.m., a search was made on Gannon's cell phone, and this was the one asking if his parents could track his phone if it was turned off. Police do believe that this search, this Google search, which was made prior to Letecia and Gannon arriving back home, they believe that search was made by Letecia and not Gannon. Based on the way the search term was phrased, there was certain punctuation in there that was very much like how Letecia's own search activity on her cell phone looked. Punctuation that shouldn't have been there, but on Letecia's search history, it was there in many searches, and it was also there in that search that happened on Gannon's phone. So there's a lot of details about this case that caused police to immediately gravitate towards Letecia Stauch as a suspect. She was the last person to see Gannon. Her stories constantly changed, and police could find no supporting evidence to prove any of her stories. For instance, the neighbor's surveillance cameras didn't pick up Gannon leaving his house that day to go play with his friend, because he didn't. And the surveillance cameras also didn't pick up Letecia leaving the house to walk around the neighborhood knocking on doors and looking for Gannon, because she didn't. There was also a lot of suspicious internet searches on Letecia's phone. She was unable to explain to police some of her abnormal behavior, like why she obtained a rental car the day after Gannon disappeared. She also had no reason for why she had disconnected her cell phone from the cellular network for extended periods of time, like she turned on airplane mode, and she couldn't explain certain weird patterns of travel. So as the search for Gannon continued, eventually Letecia Stauch was arrested on March 2nd, 2020 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and she was charged with the first-degree murder of 11-year-old Gannon Stauch, who authorities believed by that time was sadly no longer alive. And since then, since her arrest, Letecia has been nothing but drama and trouble. For instance, when she was arrested in Myrtle Beach, she had to be brought back to Colorado. So when she was being transferred on March 4th, Letecia managed to slip out of her handcuffs in the back of the patrol car, and then she attacked a deputy who then had to be hospitalized. Letecia concocted a plot to escape from jail. She pleaded not guilty to the charges and then demanded that she be able to represent herself. Later, she changed her plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. And then she and her legal team did the very most to make her look as insane as possible. And Letecia and her legal team have been a constant headache for the DA's office of Colorado Springs, because like even up until the month that jury selection was beginning for this trial, Letecia and her legal team were still being as difficult as they possibly could. So, for instance, Letecia had already been psychologically evaluated once after she pled not guilty by reason of mental insanity, right? And that evaluation deemed her to be perfectly sane, but the defense had requested a second evaluation to be performed because, obviously that first evaluation wasn't what they wanted to hear and wouldn't help their case. So the second evaluation, the results of it, that was supposed to have been received by the court in time for the prosecution and the state to look at it before trial started. But by mid-March of 2023, they had still not received that second evaluation. And everyone was like a little bit annoyed by it. Specifically, District Attorney Michael Allen, who said, quote, "This is a disrespect to our court deadlines. I've never seen anything like this," end quote. And he called it a bad faith move on the part of Letecia's legal team. Basically, like, this isn't something that you're doing because it's out of your control. It's something you're doing just to be a pain in the ass. It's been a true saga with Letecia, a true saga of epic proportions that we did talk about in a video specifically devoted to Letecia and her bananas behavior, which I've linked below if you haven't seen it yet. About 2.5 weeks after Letecia's arrest on Friday, March 20th, the El Paso County Sheriff's Department announced that they believed human remains discovered in Florida were Gannon Stauch's remains. And authorities asked the public to try and remember if they'd seen Letecia Stauch in Pace or Pensacola, Florida during the time frame of, between February 3rd through the 5th, which seemed to be the dates that law enforcement believed Letecia had snuck away with Gannon's remains so that she could dispose of them, throwing them over a bridge like garbage. Now, there was an autopsy done on the remains. It was confirmed that these remains did belong to Gannon Stauch. And it was also confirmed that Gannon had been beaten, shot, and stabbed, and that his body had then been shoved into a suitcase and dumped over a bridge. And, I remember when this information first came out that he'd been stabbed and shot and all of this, and I said to myself, like, that can't be true. I knew that Letecia had done something. I knew she was guilty. I knew she knew more than she was saying she knew. But I still kind of was holding out hope and giving her the benefit of the doubt initially to say, like, this could have been an accident. Like, maybe she just got mad and she, threw him or knocked him over and he hit his head. Like, this had to have been an accident. But then when we heard he was shot, stabbed, and literally beaten to death, you couldn't use that excuse anymore. You could no longer give her the benefit of the doubt. And at this point, Letecia faced additional charges, including first-degree murder after deliberation, first-degree murder by one in a position of trust, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, crime of violence with a firearm, crime of violence with a blunt instrument, and the list goes on and on. As I said, I've made several videos about this case. We've been covering it since the moment it happened. It's one of those cases that's really, really stayed with me. I have Gannon's birthday, September 29th, marked in my calendar, along with the birthdays of Cece and Bella Watts, Kaylee Anthony, and so many more children that were betrayed and hurt by the adults they were supposed to trust. It's been 3 years since Gannon's life was stolen from him, and although we had some information and some evidence, we didn't even have close to all of the answers, but now it's finally happening, right? Letecia Stauch is finally sitting in a courtroom and facing the music, and her trial has started. Already so much information has come out that's been confirmed. A lot of information has come out that's confirmed what we've already suspected and speculated. But like I said, it also turns out that what happened to Gannon was so much worse than any of us could have imagined. And like I said, if you guys want, I will be providing summary and update videos as we go through the trial. But today we're going to cover the first 2 days of the trial. It's going to be a long video. Okay, so grab a drink or another coffee, because I know you already had one today, because I already had one today. Grab a snack, whatever you need to kind of settle in for the long haul, because we're going to be here for a few hours. Okay, so I have my headphone in, which is super weird because I sound weird to myself. I have my headphone in so I can listen to the clips as we play them. Let's start with day one, okay? Day one, the first view we have of this courtroom, we do see that Letecia is present in the courtroom. She shuffled in with her head down. She was wearing a white blouse with a pattern of flowers on it, even though Letecia had previously told Judge Warner, the judge on her case, that she would not be dressing up for her trial. She said she intended to wear her orange El Paso County Jail jumpsuit. But obviously that did not happen, right? That didn't happen. She did dress up and she tried to look like a normal person for some reason, because everyone knows that she's not a normal person, so I don't know why she's trying so hard. She would have been better off in her orange jail jumpsuit. But I've seen many people ask why Letecia appeared in court as the girl from The Ring, and that is a valid observation, right? That is a valid observation. She's always got this creepy look about her, and I personally think, this is just my opinion, that she's just trying to look crazy because she wants us to think she's crazy so that she can go to a mental health hospital instead of prison, where she's not going to be treated kindly by the other inmates, especially in a woman's prison, right? Because criminals in general, they may not have a lot of, morals and values, and maybe they've made some mistakes, but in general, most of them have a problem with crimes against children. And Letecia's going to go to a women's prison where you also have, I believe, women to be, more like empathetic and kind-hearted and maternal when it comes to children. So she's going to have a rough time. Like, she's probably going to get the shit beat out of her on a daily basis. I hope so, at least. Like, who can I talk to arrange that? But also, reportedly, items on the table in front of Letecia while she's sitting in the courtroom, including electronics, have somehow been affixed to the table so that she can't throw them at people like she's done in the past. She did that during one of her other hearings. Did she do it because she's an angry person who has no control of herself, or did she do that because she's crazy, right? That's the question. I think it's because she's an angry person who has no control over herself and also a person who wants to seem to be crazy. So I've seen many people also comment on how Letecia's barely visible during the trial footage. She's all the way over to the right of your screen. There's a great deal of physical space between herself and her lawyers. So a lot of the time you can't even see her, or you can just see like a slice of her face or like a little bit of her hair. And people have wondered, like, why is this? Is it because her lawyers don't feel safe near her? And yeah, that's probably true. There have been rumors that Letecia's been physically abusive to her lawyers, but I think in this case, Letecia has placed herself there purposely, hoping to be out of view. She didn't even want to be present in the courtroom during the trial. So, it looks as if she's chosen to kind of smush herself up against the wall as much as she can so that the camera has a hard time seeing her, because the judge was like, absolutely not. You're going to be present in the courtroom. And I also think that some of this has to do with the fact that Letecia knows how hard it would be for her to look unstable and out of her mind for like the length of an entire day of a trial, like sometimes 8 to 9 hours at a time. And like I said, this trial is expected to go 8 weeks. So it's better for her, right? She gets to have a break from having to look unhinged, which she probably feels she has to do now since her lawyers are putting up a mental insanity defense. But there are times when I don't know if she doesn't think the camera's rolling, or, when there's a break and the trial isn't actively happening, where she does act completely normal. She smiles with her lawyers. She talks to her lawyers, a whole Casey Anthony kind of thing. So the prosecution kicked off day one of the trial with their opening statement. And this opening statement was given by District Attorney Michael Allen. And he stated that this case would hinge on the question of Letecia Stauch's sanity at the time of Gannon's murder. So basically, this trial is not going to be about whether or not Letecia killed Gannon. We know she did. She knows she did. This trial is going to be about, was she in her right mind when she did it? Did she know the difference between right and wrong when she did this to Gannon? That's what the trial is going to focus on.
Evidence in this case will show that she could distinguish between right and wrong, and that she was absolutely capable of forming the specific intent required for these charges.
Allen said that on January 26, 2020, the night before Gannon was reported missing by his stepmother, something bad happened at the Stauch household. Gannon suffered from some burns. And we already knew this, right, because of a video that Letecia Stauch herself took on her cell phone and released to the public. And at this point in the trial, I knew this trial was going to be a wild ride, because we have the state not even a full 5 minutes into their opening statements playing this video for the court and for the 12 men and women who had been chosen to sit on this jury.
Gannon suffered some burns. You'll learn this from a video recording this defendant made that night, January 26th. You'll hear her as she manipulated Gannon, putting guilt on him for some mistake that a child made. And in that recording, you'll hear Gannon say in his own words, "I'm just worried about my burns."
Two, I just don't know what to do. Gannon, I promise this is the last time I'm gonna ask you. I'm just freaked out, okay? Are you sure you didn't do it on purpose? Okay, you promise. You promise. Pinky promise. Okay, all right, so listen. We're all right, we're gonna have to sell stuff to fix it. Okay? So we figure out what we gotta sell. We can sell the sofa, we can sell whatever, because we gotta get it fixed. So lady, don't be mad at us and kick us out of the house. Okay? You got it? You got it?
I'm just worried about my
Okay, shh. Listen. So tomorrow,
It's a tough video to hear. It's an impactful video to hear. I know I personally try to only listen to it when I absolutely have to because it breaks my heart every single time. To hear that Gannon is clearly in pain, but not only in physical pain from the burns, you can hear him say, I'm worried about my burns, but emotional pain because he made a mistake, allegedly. I don't even think he made a mistake, but he's being told he made a mistake. And his stepmother was doing the very most to make him feel as guilty and shameful about it as possible, even going so far as to say they would need to sell things in the house to fix whatever damage he had done. And at the end, you can hear him say, I'm just worried about my burns. And Letecia immediately shushes him. Shh. Sending a message that she doesn't care about his burns. And you have to wonder, how did he get those burns in the first place? And why did it seem like she didn't want him to talk about the burns because she knew she was recording and she wanted that video to support a specific narrative. A narrative she knew she was going to lay out for the police and for Gannon's parents after his disappearance. I don't think that Gannon had an accident with a candle, as Letecia would later claim. I think that she did something and then blamed him for it, gaslighted him into thinking he did it, and then burned him to punish him. But that's just my opinion. Once again, we're going to find out more as we go through this trial. So next, DA Michael Allen went into the core of the state's case, what they believed happened to Gannon at the hands of Letecia Stauch based on the evidence.
He'll tell you that Gannon suffered 18 stab wounds to his body, his chest, his back, his head, and most importantly, his arms and his hands. Why is that important? Gannon was fighting for his life, and those were defensive wounds. Next came a crushing blow to his head that was so strong, it fractured his skull like an eggshell. That wasn't enough for this defendant. He retrieved a 9mm handgun, fired it at Gannon 3 times. 2 bullets struck the pillow near him and were caught in the fibers of that pillow. That 3rd bullet entered his jaw, traveled through his head, fracturing his mandible, his vertebrae, hitting his spinal cord, and lodged in the back of his head and was recovered at autopsy.
That was hard to hear. 18 stab wounds. 18 stab wounds to a little boy, an 11-year-old boy. Stab wounds not only to his chest, but to his head and his back as he fought for his life, which was exhibited in these defensive wounds, followed by a crushing blow to his head. That, as the DA put it, fractured his skull like an eggshell. And then for some reason, Letecia thought it was necessary to get a 9mm handgun and fire 3 bullets at this little boy, who posed no risk to her at all. It is absolutely heinous. And am I wrong for feeling that as a juror, this is all I needed to hear? We aren't talking about a lot of gray areas in this kind of situation. This was a little boy who not only was not threatening Letecia in any way, shape, or form, but at the time he was attacked by her, he was laying in his own bed. The evidence shows that. She brutally murdered him for no reason, without the motive of being concerned for her own well-being or feeling afraid that he was going to hurt her. And she beat him, stabbed him, and shot him. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care why you did it. I don't care if you're in your right mind or not. You don't deserve to breathe air for another minute, as far as I'm concerned. Some people might say like, oh, well, if she is legally, mentally insane, that excuses it. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Not for me. Maybe for you. And that's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. Not for me. Someone who would do something like that to a child is literally the definition of a person who has lost their right to be a part of society and who would pose a serious risk to many innocent people should she ever be allowed to roam the streets again. And honestly, she does not deserve to, go hang out in some like cushy mental hospital where she's gonna, be able to watch TV and read and paint and, have therapy and have people help her. She doesn't deserve help. She doesn't deserve a moment of peace. So the DA, Michael Allen, then told the jury that Letecia used the blankets and the pillows that were surrounding Gannon on his bed, gathered them up along with his body. She then shoved Gannon's broken and battered body into a suitcase. She took the suitcase around the corner to a storage area in the basement where she hid it for a little while. Not for long. But DA Michael Allen said what Letecia didn't know was that she was leaving clues behind in that storage area, such as a plastic bin and an Amazon box that had Gannon's blood on it, as well as the concrete floor had Gannon's blood on it. And after she had done this, Letecia decided to clean Gannon's room, where the crime happened, and Gannon's room is in the basement. This is a whole nother conversation. Why is Gannon sleeping in the basement, right? Why has he been relegated to the basement? But his bedroom was down there. His bed was down there. Once again, the evidence will show that Gannon was laying in his bed in his own room when he was brutally murdered by Letecia Stauch. And we know that around 3:15 p.m. on that day, Gannon's little sister Lena arrived home from school. And she asked, where's Gannon? And at that time, Letecia told Lena that Gannon was asleep. She told Lena to go outside and play. We also know that at 4:42 p.m., Leticia's older daughter, 17-year-old Harley, arrived at the house to pick Lena up. And 10 minutes after that, Letecia sent her daughter Harley a text message asking Harley to stop at the store, get a bunch of cleaning products, right? Carpet cleaner, trash bags, baking soda. And officials believe that Letecia used those products to clean up the crime scene. She scrubbed the walls and the carpets with brushes that were later found in the dishwasher, not only with carpet fibers in them, but with Gannon's blood in the brushes. Letecia cleaned so hard and so thoroughly that by the time the police arrived that evening to take a report of a missing child, it looked, to the naked eye, as if nothing out of place had happened there. Now, the clothes that Letecia was wearing when she murdered Gannon, they have never been found, but the shoes she'd been wearing, at least when she either murdered him or cleaned up the crime scene, those were found on top of the washing machine. They had been washed, they were wet, and they'd been placed there on the washing machine to dry.
That reddish rust color that you can see on the soles, Gannon's blood and DNA were found on those shoes. You can see just how much blood she was walking through as she was cleaning up that mess. Took more deliberate action. She collected and discarded other important clues. I mentioned she stabbed Gannon 18 times. The instrument that she used to stab Gannon has never been found. That 9mm handgun that she used to fire 3 rounds at Gannon, shell casing ejected out of that firearm each time she pulled the trigger. No shell casing was ever found in Gannon's room.
So the question I have after hearing the deliberate and thorough way Letecia cleaned up after this murder, the calculated lengths she went to in order to cover it up so she wouldn't get in trouble, can you call a person who was able to do that legally insane? She was so out of her mind that she killed Gannon, and she didn't know what she was doing, but directly after, it certainly seems like she had a firm grip on reality because she springs right into action to make sure that she doesn't get caught. Now, why would you do something to make sure you didn't get caught if you didn't know the difference between right and wrong? You're only going to not want to get caught if you know what you did was wrong, and now you don't want to get caught and be punished for it. The opening statement goes on to talk about what Letecia did in the days following Gannon's murder, and we'll talk about the timeline in more depth when it comes up during the trial, but basically the gist is she did the most to ensure that no one would ever find Gannon's body and no one would ever know what she had done, or at least they wouldn't be able to prove it. DA Michael Allen says, listen, the evidence we are going to show you will prove her sanity. It will prove that she knew exactly what she was doing, and she purposely lied, misled, and gaslit everyone to buy herself more time and to add confusion to an already muddled situation. And then Michael Allen, the DA, said something that stunned me, and I don't know if this was the first time this information has been released or revealed. I thought I was keeping a close eye on this case and reading up about new updates as they came out over the years, so I don't know if I just missed this part, but he started talking about Harley Hunt, Letecia's daughter, who, remember, she was only 17 years old at the time of Gannon's murder. I've always wondered what Harley's part in all of this was. She was living at the home. She was working at Massage Envy. She was planning on joining the Air Force. She seemed to be just like any other teenage girl. But we know that during the day of Gannon's murder and in the days that followed, Letecia and her daughter Harley were communicating quite a bit. So I was really waiting to see if Harley was going to kind of be like maybe pulled in as a second defendant, or if she was going to testify against her mother, Letecia, during this trial? And DA Mike Allen answered that question and even elaborated.
See, Harley Hunt was in the best position to know the defendant's state of mind, especially as it relates to when this crime occurred. She was the only other older person in the house when Al left to Oklahoma, but she becomes the defendant's closest confidant after the defendant killed Gannon Stauch. In fact, she also rode with the defendant on that van ride from Colorado Springs to Florida. She'll be able to tell you in her own words whether the defendant understood the difference between right and wrong, whether she could act intentionally or deliberately or not. And she'll tell you that she could on both counts.
Damn. So this is crazy. When he talks about that van ride from Colorado Springs to Florida, he's talking about the trip that Letecia took to get rid of Gannon's body, right? So we're going to find out, was Harley in the car with her when she got rid of Gannon's body? I know I remember something from the affidavit that they had both stayed at a hotel in Florida that was pretty close to the location where Gannon's body was left. We're going to find out what Harley knows, what her part in this was, and we now know she's on the defense's witness list, so she is testifying against her mother. And as the DA said, she's going to be able to testify to the fact that Letecia Stauch, who I guess was with Harley and talking to Harley more than she was with anybody in these days, whether Letecia Stauch was in her right mind at this time. And once again, this trial isn't really about whether or not Letecia killed Gannon, because as we will come to find, she's not denying that. At least not anymore. She did for a long time, but not anymore. She literally was still denying it when she was in prison writing that crackerjack letter to the judge about getting threats in her peanut butter. She was like, no one who's innocent, and I am, should be treated this way in our country. Like, she was still denying that. And I think this was just like a year and a half ago. So now she's saying like, yeah, I did it. I did everything that you're accusing me of, but I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't in my right mind. During the trial, it's going to be the prosecution's job to prove that Letecia was in her right mind at the time of the crime, that she wasn't legally insane, that she did know the difference between right and wrong, and that she knew what she was doing was wrong. And once again, as a jury member, I'm going to be looking around the courtroom at this point like, I'm ready to decide. I've heard enough. Can we get this over with and go home? Because once again, the simple fact that Letecia went to such lengths to cover up her crime tells me she knew it was wrong. Like, what are we doing? 8 weeks of this? Come on. So once District Attorney Michael Allen finished his opening statements, it was time for the defense to get up and make their case. And one of Letecia's lawyers, Will Cook, would do the honors of presenting the opening statement. And he starts off really soft and calm as he's addressing the jury, like he's approaching a spooked horse. And he basically says, listen, I talked to some of you during jury selection. I've read the jury questionnaires, and I realize there's a lot of strong negative feelings towards my client, Letecia Stauch. She's evil, she's a murderer, she's guilty, etc., etc. Will Cook, the lawyer, basically alleges that this is the worst thing a defense attorney could encounter. A jury who's been so biased by the media reporting and the public scrutiny of this case that they've entered the courtroom with their minds made up without ever hearing a shred of evidence. First of all, I resent this implication. Okay, there's been plenty of legitimate and official evidence released. The arrest affidavit, for instance, which I have right here, okay? It's like over 40 pages or almost 40 pages of police evidence. Police evidence. And it's not as if Letecia didn't try to take advantage of the public interest surrounding this case herself. She voluntarily gave an interview where she spent far too long trying to convince everyone that she was stepmother of the year and where she tried to paint herself as the victim. She was all over the message boards and Twitter and the YouTube videos arguing with people, accusing Gannon's mother, Landon, of being a drug addict and a bad parent, even accusing Landon of being responsible for Gannon's death at one point, because Landon hangs out with like sketchy characters. Letecia tried to say that Al was responsible for Gannon's death at one point. So if there's strong opinions about this case, those opinions aren't based on speculation or hearsay, as he's going to try and pretend they are. These opinions are based on facts and evidence, and also the bizarre behavior of Letecia Stauch herself, who never hid away like she should have. She never shied away from remaining front and center in this case since day one. Okay. Also, the worst thing a defense attorney can encounter is not a jury who's already kind of heard things about this case and has kind of figured out where they stand on it, I don't think that's the worst thing a defense attorney can encounter. The worst thing a defense attorney can encounter is a client who is guilty of sin, who is so guilty she can even no longer claim that she's guilty, and she has to pretend to be crazy to get away with this thing, this horrible, horrendous thing that she did. The worst thing that this defense attorney can encounter is having a client like Letecia and having to stand up in front of, normal human beings like this jury, like the judge, like us, and act as if we're the bad ones. We're the bad ones for hating her and knowing she belongs in prison. And I mean, listen, I'm not trying to be an asshole to Will Cook. I honestly will be completely honest and upfront with you. I usually dislike defense attorneys in cases like this. But Letecia is being represented by two lawyers, Will Cook and Josh Tellini. And I will say, even though during these opening statements, Will Cook pissed me off more times than I can count, I do kind of feel bad for these dudes. First of all, they got nothing to work with, man. Like, this case is going to be almost impossible to win for them. They just wasted years of their lives. Secondly, they've had to deal with Letecia's annoying and extra ass for so long. They know she sucks. They know she sucks. They know she's a terrible person and she's evil incarnate, and they still have to figure out some way to make her appear sympathetic to actual human beings who have a moral compass and who aren't soulless ghouls from the underworld like Letecia's. Okay? I guarantee you Letecia has beaten her attorneys down over the past few years. She's probably completely eviscerated any shred of sanity these two gentlemen had before they met her. She's probably been emotionally abusive. We've had rumors that she's been physically abusive. She's definitely mentally abusive. And I was starting to feel a little bad for Will Cook. But as I was, starting to have like a heart for him, Will Cook continued with his opening statement, and he did something that I think was supposed to be impactful, or maybe like wake everyone up or like shock people. I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know why he did this, but I will admit I have a tendency to laugh when things are heavy, awkward, or cringy, and somehow Will Cook managed to be all of these things at once when he started talking about how terrible the facts of this case are. And then he's like, this is horrible. This is like the worst thing ever. Like, I can't believe she did this. She sucks. It's terrible that she did this. And then he proceeds to act as if he's quitting. Like, he's not going to represent her. And he's going to walk out of the courtroom.
What you saw on the board this afternoon, that's the PG stuff, the rated G information, photos you're going to see. Go forward in this case, you're going to see the autopsy photos. You're going to see the photos of when Gannon was brought out of the suitcase. And they're horrible. Horrible. It was an awful, awful thing that was done to Gannon. And I see Mr. Allen get up here, and he's emotional, almost into tears, talking about it. And I get it. I get it. What happened to that little 11-year-old boy is beyond description. The facts of this case, awful. It's so bad. This is a lost cause.
Oh, he's coming back. He's coming back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't quit. I can't leave this courtroom. Got to do my job in this case. Mr. Tellini does. I can't just, after that opening statement, all the information that I've seen, the photos, the smiling picture of Gannon, hearing about him being shot and stabbed multiple times, hundreds of witnesses, and 800 pieces of evidence that are going to come in. I can't check out now.
All right, so I did you all a favor, by the way, because this Will Cook, this defense attorney, I don't know if he's trying to just make it seem like his opening statement is longer, or if this is just the way he talks, or if he's making it up as he goes along. But he pauses so long between sentences, not even sentences. Like, sometimes he has these super long pauses in the middle of sentences. So he'll be like, "This is absolutely horrible and terrible. Like, it's just the worst. He's the worst person to listen to. So I cut out those big gaps in his like statements. Also, when you see him walking towards the door, just like leaving, pretending to leave the courtroom, and then all of a sudden he turns around and he walks back, I sped it up so he walked back quicker because it's just it's so ludicrous. Like, when I tell you that when this happened, my mouth dropped open. First of all, Will Cook is just going on and on about how awful this is. What happened to Gannon? And he's like, this is horrible. What Letecia did to Gannon was horrendous. And it's going to get so much worse, guys. When you see the pictures, like what you're seeing right now is just PG. Like, it's going to get so much worse. This is lost cause. And he walks all the way to the door of the courtroom. And at that point, he sort of like pauses as if he's thinking about it, And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you should have just kept walking. You should have legitimately left the courtroom, because I know this was performative and I know it's courtroom theatrics that even our old friend Jose Baez would be proud of. But it's also true what he said. It is a lost cause. Like, he should just give up. But then he walks back and he's like, no, I can't give up. Even though there's dozens and dozens of eyewitnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence, and there's no way I'm going to be able to convince a single soul watching this that this woman over here has any redeemable qualities, I can't give up. It wouldn't be fair to the court system. It wouldn't be fair to the process. It wouldn't be fair to our great country whose flag flies so high. It wouldn't be fair to Letecia Stauch.
And I know people will say, well, who gives a shit about what's fair for Miss Stauch?
Yep. Yep. Is he a witch? Did he read my mind? Because that's exactly what I said out loud when I first watched this trial. Like, who gives a shit what's fair for Letecia Stauch, right? So Will Cook starts going on about the Bill of Rights, wars being fought for the rights that Letecia's entitled to. He says he gets that Letecia has already lost in the court of public opinion. But this is the court of law, not the media, not Facebook. This is a special place. Forget what you know. Forget what you've heard. Now, it was at this point that I realized, even more so, that Letecia's defense team has nothing. They are going to perform mental gymnastics and ignore all the doctors who said Letecia was totally and completely sane, hoping that they can bank on that one doctor who they paid enough to convince him to testify that Letecia had no idea what she was doing, right? Because of her insanity. They have nothing. And it makes me feel so good because now I can watch this trial without the stress of wondering if Letecia's going to get away with it. I can watch it and just take in the information that we've all been waiting for so long, because I'm not worried any longer. If he had anything, he would have at least trotted it out in a sample form during the opening statement. If he had anything. This was probably the most awkward and weird opening statement I've ever seen. It was uncomfortable for me to watch it. I laughed out loud several times, not even meaning to, just because it's so ludicrous, especially when he says something like, folks, you probably think I'm the devil incarnate standing up here. Like that, he says that. Nah, dude, I feel bad for you. I think you're another victim of Letecia Stauch, and your life will never be the same after this. You'll never get another night of peaceful rest after this. I know I couldn't. If I had to defend Letecia with a straight face, if I took a penny of anybody's money to try and make sure that this woman didn't get the punishment she deserved, I would never get a night of peaceful sleep again. I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror. I feel bad for you. Your life is ruined forever. Then this dude, Will Cook, has the audacity to put up a picture of Gannon and Letecia together. And for me, knowing that Gannon's parents, Al and Landon, were in the courtroom at this time, I broke inside a little bit for them. I broke inside. To have to see a picture of your child with the person who you just heard stabbed them 18 times, crushed their head like an eggshell, and then fired 3 bullets at them, and you got to sit there and do nothing and not get up and literally knock this lawyer out?
All right, we've got a photo here. We've got some familiar looking faces. Gannon, Letecia Stauch. Stepmom, stepson. Gannon's little sister in the back. Look at that. Looks like everybody's doing pretty good. Happy, sunny day. And a win would have this photo been taken? The day before Gannon died. The day before he was killed. It wasn't a photo of evil, anger. The photo of someone, by all accounts, who was a loving stepmother.
What? Oh my God. Like I said, they got nothing, which is why Will Cook is wasting his time with this pointless bullshit. And first of all, can he not even say his own client's name right? Is he saying Stauch? It's Stauch, right? Like, I remember specific. It's not Stauch. What is he doing? That's weird. But anyways, he's got nothing. He is just, running the clock down so he has like some substance of an opening statement, but like nothing. He's like, let me show you a picture of Gannon and Letecia Stauch the day before she killed him. And don't they look happy? She doesn't look evil. She looks like a nice, caring stepmother. The fuck? I have a lawyer telling me to look at a picture and consider it to be an accurate representation of anything close to reality. It is the opposite of a logical argument. Like, where did this dude go to law school? Because that's ludicrous to me. Pictures are literally reality as we want to see it. No one posts pictures of themselves at their worst. No one waits until they're having a temper tantrum that they can document and then share with the world. No one is filling Instagram with pictures of them abusing their children or their stepchildren, yet plenty of people out there still are, right? What is he talking about? We've seen firsthand in so many of these cases how pictures do not accurately represent what is happening behind the scenes. Look at the case we just covered, Angela Craig, right? Her dentist husband, James, killed her. And I put up a ton of pictures showing them happy, loving, holding each other. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But that's about it. 1,000 words. And those 1,000 words are basically whatever words you want them to be. It's not reality, and it's not the truth. In reality, Al Stauch was out of town. Letecia wanted to send him a nice picture to show him how great she was, what a great wife, and what a great stepmother she was. His kids were safe in her hands while he was gone. They were going hiking. They're having a great day, sunny day. We're so happy. We love each other. And as we know, that could not have been further from the truth, okay? It could not have been further from the truth. What is this lawyer doing? Like, look at this picture. When, oh, when could it have been taken? What an idiot. Ooh, I'm losing my patience with you, Will Cook. I'm starting to feel less and less sorry for you. The sympathy, the empathy, it's leaking from my body as we speak. So Will Cook says that Letecia, she had the worst life, man. She was hiding and suffering from abuse that had gone on since she was a toddler. Because, the trendy thing is now to blame your childhood when you don't want to take accountability for brutally murdering an 11-year-old child.
A troubled childhood. Mother wasn't really much of a mother. She had a line of stepdads or boyfriends or whatever. Her mother, I'm in and out, I'm in and out, in and out, in and out of her life. From the time she was 3 or 4 years old, Miss Stauch, until she finally moved out. And she suffered. She suffered horrifically from these stepfathers, these boyfriends of her mother. Watched her mother get beat by the boyfriends, physically abused, until eventually the physical abuse, these men reserved for her mother, eventually trained on Stauch here. Girl. First, it was just physical beatings, whoopings, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and then it became sexual, where she was molested regularly, 5 or 6, until she was a teenager. She used to have to sleep in the car out in the driveway to get away, not have to be molested and sexually assaulted by these men. Sleep in the car in the driveway of her house. And because her mom wasn't around a lot, it's kind of an absentee mom, a lot of these stepfathers, if you could call them that, cared for Miss Stauch exclusively. Mom was out somewhere doing something, gone for several weeks at a time, and Miss Stauch, as a young child and a young woman and a teenager, was left in the care of these men.
So how many other people in the world had not so great parents? How many other people watched their mother be abused? How many other people were physically and sexually abused in childhood? And obviously, I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not normalizing it. I'm not saying I don't feel bad for people who that happens to. However, I am saying that unfortunately, this stuff happens to a lot of people, a lot of kids, and I hate it. I wish it didn't happen. I wish I could stop it in every instance that it does happen. You guys know that. But it happens a lot. I understand it has long-lasting implications, but we are not going to use it as an excuse for the brutal and violent murder of another innocent child. And that's assuming that this even happened and that Letecia's not making it up or exaggerating. If you go on to repeat this cycle, if you as a victim make the choice to victimize someone else, a child, I feel bad that you went through a hard time, but I don't excuse what you did, and you still need to face repercussions. Both things can be true at once. We can say it shouldn't have happened to you, and we can also say it shouldn't have happened to Gannon. We can say that no one should have hurt you, and we can say you shouldn't have hurt Gannon. Obviously, at this point, I haven't seen what kind of evidence the defense is going to put forward to prove this abuse. If they even do, right? That's also a question I have. Are they even going to put forward any evidence to prove this abuse? Because I think it's interesting that they're claiming the abuse happened at the hands of all of these random men, boyfriends and stepfathers, boyfriends of Letecia's mother, who I guarantee you they don't know the names of and can't prove one way or the other. Now, Al Stauch did say at some point during these first few days, or I forget when he said it in the trial, but he did say, like, yeah, one time Letecia told me that one of her stepfathers like molested her, but she made it seem as like if it was a one-off kind of thing, and it didn't happen repeatedly with him, and it didn't happen repeatedly with multiple men. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen to her. I don't think it happened to her, or at least not to this extent at all. If you're new to the saga of Letecia Stauch, you might feel I'm being unfair, but I've heard this woman lie more times than I've heard her tell the truth. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard her tell the truth. One of the stories that she told about what had happened to Gannon was that some random dude was waiting for her and Gannon in the house when they got home from Petco, and then he raped her and then took Gannon, right? Hold on. It's in the arrest affidavit. Letecia said she arrived home around 14:30 hours on January 27th and disarmed her security system, then went into the basement. She said that Eduardo, this is the name of the guy who she claims raped her. Eduardo was in the basement, attacked her, pointed a gun at her. She said that after Eduardo held her at gunpoint, he allowed her to go upstairs to greet her daughter, Lena Stauch, who had just arrived home from school. Letecia said she sent her outside to ride her bike, then returned to the basement where Eduardo vaginally penetrated her against her will between 15:30 and 16:30 hours. During this period, she believed that she had hit her head and may have blacked out. Investigators noted no injuries on Letecia's head during their contact with her. Eduardo also said during the attack, Gannon jumped on Eduardo's back, and Eduardo was able to throw Gannon off his back and across the room. After Eduardo had finished, he had the gun held to Gannon, demanded a suitcase. Letecia provided him with a brown suitcase and a cardboard box. Eduardo attempted to sexually assault her again. She hit her head and blacked out again. Letecia stated she tried to fight Eduardo off but was unsuccessful. So, yeah, I could keep going. She also made other, statements that weren't true. She said that she was driving with Gannon. This was another story of how Gannon happened to go missing. She said she and Gannon were driving, and then some guy ran out in the middle of the road, and then when she stopped, the guy grabbed Gannon and left. And then another time, she said her and Gannon were riding his bicycle. Gannon was riding his bicycle, and he fell off the bicycle and hit his head, and then somebody came up and kidnapped him. Like, she told a bunch of random ass stories like that, and they all turned out to not be true. She wasn't raped by Eduardo. Eduardo doesn't exist, okay? If you can lie once about being sexually assaulted, you can lie anytime about being sexually assaulted. You can lie multiple times about being sexually assaulted. That's my opinion. If you lied once about this, why should I believe you now, T? Why? So Will Cook says, I know some of you think I'm telling a fanciful tale. Yep, but, and then I expected him to be like, we're going to bring in witnesses to prove this to you. We're going to bring witnesses to testify to you about what she went through. But then he literally says, like, you're in a courtroom now, so you have to believe me. I'm paraphrasing. That's not what he literally said, but I personally feel like that's what he meant. And personally, also, I'm not comfortable with that. Here, I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to play you the clip of him saying this. And then you guys tell me what you think he meant in the comments. Like, was he actually saying, I know you guys think I'm telling a fanciful lie, but you're in a courtroom now, so you just have to, dismiss your logic and your reason and what you know and what you see with your own eyes and believe me. I'm going to play the clip.
And I know some of you, based on your jury questionnaires, think I'm telling some fanciful tale about this. I get it. I read the questionnaires. But you have sworn an oath multiple times to follow the law and the evidence. You don't like insanity or dissociative identity disorder, that's okay. Joke or an excuse or not valid, that's okay. It's okay if you think that outside those doors. In here, you got to believe it's a legitimate mental health defense, that in fact it exists and that it is scientifically backed.
Like, what? No, I don't have to believe it's a legitimate mental health defense. Like, I have to believe that it has been a legitimate mental health defense that's been used in other cases, I guess. But no, in Letecia's case, I don't have to sit in this courtroom, suspend logic and reason, and believe that you are putting forth a legitimate mental health defense. It's such a weird take. He's like, I don't care if you like mental insanity. I don't care if you like dissociative identity disorder. You don't have to like it, but God damn it, in this here courtroom, you're going to believe it, okay? And I felt that if Will Cook's goal was to be condescending, he nailed it, man. No one is walking around or sitting in that courtroom saying, we don't like insanity. Who would say that? We don't like dissociative identity disorder. No one's saying that. It's not like something you like or don't like. It's so weird. We just don't believe that Letecia Stauch has a legitimate mental health defense. We don't believe that Letecia Stauch has dissociative identity disorder. We don't believe that Letecia Stauch didn't know what she was doing was wrong when she did it, okay? And you can parade out your experts, the experts you paid to say what you want them to say, but the evidence speaks for itself. It's not we don't like it, we don't believe it. So stop being a condescending prick, Will Cook. So from this opening statement, we know that Letecia is going with an insanity defense, and she's claiming to have DID, dissociative identity disorder. So what is DID? People who suffer from DID have two or more separate personalities, and allegedly these personalities can control a person's behavior at times and also leave them with memory gaps. How convenient. T has a separate personality living inside of her, maybe more than one. We're going to find out what the experts are saying, and her other personality or personalities must have done this to Gannon, leaving her with no memory of it whatsoever. We know, right, that DID is a real disorder that people suffer from. However, it's not super common. Very few people suffer from it. It's kind of rare. It affects between 0.01 and 1% of the population. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that I personally don't believe Letecia Stauch is suffering from it. That's an opinion shared by the first round of mental health experts who analyzed her and talked to her. And I'm saying this because this lawyer went on for 5 minutes telling us it's a valid, real condition. Like, yeah, dude, you're not here to prove that it's a valid and real condition. Like, we have brains in our heads. We live on planet Earth. We know it is. You're here to prove that Dr. T. Stauch has it. I'm sick of these freaking criminals claiming insanity and throwing these, as Will Cook is trying to make sure we know, very real mental health conditions out as defenses, because it reinforces a very harmful stereotype that mentally ill people are often violent criminals, right? This is something that generally some people do believe. Now, that's becoming less common. It was far more common to just sort of like assume somebody who had a mental illness of some kind was a violent criminal, but it still is very much something that's in the public's head, right? Especially something like multiple personality disorders, or DID, as it's called now. It used to be called multiple personality disorders. It's called DID now. I don't know why they changed the name, just probably to confuse us, but it is something that some people think. And they think of like, oh, multiple personalities, you must be like crazy and dangerous and you don't know what you're doing and you're unstable and I can't be around you. Like, this is uncomfortable. And that's just not the truth. In one study of 173 individuals with DID, criminal justice involvement was low and symptomology did not predict criminality. So basically, they're saying that among these people in this trial, in this study, they didn't have a history of criminal behavior. They weren't actively participating in criminal behavior. And just because they were diagnosed with DID, it really didn't have any correlation to any criminal activities that they were a part of. So they weren't doing like violent or illegal things specifically because they had dissociative identity disorder. Now, Letecia's lawyer says that Letecia broke on the day that she murdered Gannon. And I guess every time after that, every time when she lied and gaslit everyone to cover her crime up, when Letecia stuffed Gannon's body into a suitcase and threw it over a bridge, she must have broken on those days too, right? All of those times when she was actively trying to avoid taking any accountability for this crime, she was breaking on those. It was her other personality coming in. Letecia was like, other personality, you did this, so you got to clean it up. I'll just take a back seat. You come over and take charge, get in the driver's seat, right? Because if Letecia didn't remember doing it, why would she feel the need to cover it up? I guess I'm jumping the gun. We're going to get there. They're going to explain it all to us. They're going to let us know exactly how Letecia Stauch is not a bad person, even though she's a literal demon. Okay? Will Cook says that Letecia wasn't killing Gannon that day. She was killing the demons from the dark depths of her childhood. I shit you not, he actually said this. We're told that the defense has mental health experts that will say Letecia was legally insane on the day of Gannon's murder, and the prosecution is also going to come out with their own experts who will probably say the opposite. Like, this is what Will Cook is saying right now, and I really have to believe he's just killing time at this point. You know, like I said, lots of long pauses, lots of repeating stuff, saying obvious things like, we're going to bring out experts who support our narrative, and the prosecution's going to bring out experts that support their narrative. Okay, guys, that was really impactful for you, right? Did that change your whole mindset in this trial that I just told you? Like, I don't know what's going on, but this was probably the worst, most damaging opening statement an attorney could ever give, to the point where I'm concerned that after T is inevitably found guilty and given a life sentence, she'll appeal based on ineffective defense. Based on this opening statement alone, I don't understand what he was doing. I wanted to just fast forward through it at some points, but I didn't, because he kept like popping out with some audacity-laced bullshit. Like, he would just be like randomly mumbling and repeating himself and these, oh my God, obnoxious and torturous long pauses. But then he would say something that would be like, what did he just say? So I had to go back. So I couldn't fast forward. I could not save myself the torture of Will Cook's opening statement. Okay. So opening statements are done. Now we're moving on to day 2 of the trial. And we opened day 2 with Gannon's father, Al, on the stand. And Al spends some time talking about Gannon, how much Gannon loved playing video games, especially Mario and Sonic, and how Gannon wanted to be a YouTuber who played video games on YouTube one day. He even made a YouTube video already. Al talked about how much Gannon and his little sister Lena loved each other, and how after Gannon had died, Lena said the thing she would miss the most was getting on Gannon's nerves. You know, it's that brother-sister thing. Like, they bicker and they fight with each other, but if anybody else comes for them, they've got each other's back. They loved each other. Then in this testimony, we get into what happened when Gannon went missing, because remember, Al was out of town at the time in Oklahoma for training with the Colorado National Guard. And he mentioned learning from Letecia about an accident in the living room with a candle. This accident happened either on the evening of Sunday, January 26th, or early the next morning, but he couldn't remember if Letecia had given him this information over text or on a phone call. Al remembered when he found out that his 11-year-old son was missing, how he had to fly home, and when he arrived in Colorado, Letecia picked him up from the airport. And according to Al Stauch, he became kind of suspicious of her at that point. And he started not believing her story in that moment, because Letecia told him that she'd gotten dropped off at the airport by a friend, and she had to go upstairs while Al waited for his luggage so she could rent a car, because she didn't have her own car with her. Why? Because she had hidden Gannon's body in the suitcase in her car. Okay, that's why.
I was down at the luggage carrier. She went upstairs to get a rental vehicle.
Okay. Did that seem odd to you?
Absolutely.
So Letecia told her husband, Al, that she had to get a rental car because they were going to be doing a lot of driving around looking for Gannon. And because her car was a lease, she wanted to get the rental car so she wasn't putting a bunch of miles on her car, miles that she would have to pay for when she turned her lease in. Because that is the exact first thought you have when your 11-year-old child is missing. and he hasn't come home all night. You think, I really want to go out driving and looking for him, but damn, if I go over those miles, it's really going to hit my wallet. Al got even more suspicious when they ended up not even looking for Gannon in T's new rental car. He said they drove home from the airport, she parked the rental car in the driveway, and then they got into Al's truck and drove around and looked for Gannon, which made absolutely no sense to him. And right off the bat, T's stories were not adding up.
Did she tell you where the Tiguan was?
She did. She said it was, so, because I asked, it brings back memory. I asked, how did you get to the airport if your car's not here? Well, I parked it at French Elementary School, which is where she was employed. And one of my coworkers brought me, or former coworker, whatever it was, one of my coworkers brought me to the airport and dropped me off.
Did you ever drive over to French Elementary School to look for that vehicle?
I did.
Did you find it there?
I did not.
Did you find that odd?
Absolutely.
On the stand, Al described Gannon's relationship with Letecia as trusting. He said that he believed Gannon had a love in his heart for T, and Al did not think that Gannon feared Letecia. Al said that Gannon was a mama's boy. He loved his mother Landon so much, and Al believed that Gannon had some of that same love for Letecia. Now, I don't want to question the recollections of Gannon's father, but, and this is just my personal opinion, it is hard for me to believe that Letecia and Gannon had this picture-perfect relationship. Al spent a good 15 minutes during this trial talking about how much he traveled for his work with the National Guard, so I wonder if Letecia pretended to be this loving stepmother when Al was around, but when he wasn't, the monster came out, and Gannon was too afraid of her to say anything to his mother or father because he knew that he was still going to be living with Letecia, and he knew his dad was still going to have to be out of town a lot for work. You know, in general, kids, especially that age, they feel powerless. They don't think that accommodations are going to be made for them if they feel unhappy or unsafe. They don't think that going to adults and making, serious allegations about other adults is going to land them in a good place. Maybe Gannon felt that he would tell his father, Letecia did this, and then his father would go and ask Letecia, and she would lie and gaslight like she always does. And I'm sure Gannon had some experience with this. Letecia would say, no, I've never done that at all. What are you talking about? That's horrible. I can't believe he's saying that about me. And then Al would punish Gannon for lying. Or Al would say, Gannon, Letecia says this isn't happening, like what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And then when Al leaves, Gannon's stuck with Letecia, who now knows that Gannon's telling his father all this stuff about her. And so she's going to take it out on him more, So oftentimes these kids just do whatever it takes to survive day by day, which is like, okay, I know she's mean to me. I know she hurts me sometimes, but it's only a couple of days at a time. When my dad's out of town, I just got to get through it and wait for him to come home. That could have been what happened. Al said in 2017, when he took a job at Fort Greely in Alaska, T, his wife, was not supportive of that, and they got into many verbal disagreements and arguments about it. And this was when they were living together in a house in Myrtle Beach that they owned together, and the day that Al left for training, Letecia threw all of his belongings outside. Now, Al and Letecia made up, they reunited. T even suggested to Al that she and her daughter Harley would move to Alaska for Al to be with him. She claimed that she was looking for a teaching job in Alaska, and she'd enrolled Harley into a school there, and basically, Letecia kind of made it seem like she was going to do that in spite of the fact that she hated Alaska. But T used some different manipulation and basically tactics in order to get Al to leave Alaska, because at the end of the day, she wasn't ever going to do anything that she didn't want to do. She was going to move other people to do what she wanted to do, like chess pieces on a board, but she was never going to live in Alaska. She didn't actually want to live in Alaska. Now, during this part of the testimony, the lawyers and the judges kind of argued back and forth about the admissibility of these manipulation tactics that Letecia used. The prosecutor said Letecia had done certain things to manipulate Al, and Letecia's defense attorneys objected and said, he can't say she was manipulating him because he can't speak to her intent. Finally, the judge said, okay, Al can say that he felt Letecia was attempting to manipulate him into leaving Alaska. And you'll never believe the tactics that Letecia used to do this. Actually, you might believe them because it's Letecia, and we know that she's used some of these tactics before. So this is the same woman who said Gannon disappeared after he went to a friend's house, but she couldn't give the friends' names or addresses. Then she said that Gannon got taken by some man who was waiting in their basement when they got home from the store. This man raped Letecia. He made off with Gannon. Then she said, no, that's not what happened. Actually, Gannon and I were driving. This man ran on the road in front of us, made me stop the car. Then he took Gannon and made off with him. Oh, I think also the day that she killed Gannon, she said that he was homesick from school because of a stomach ache. She called the school that she was working at the time to let them know she couldn't come in. But the reason that she told them she couldn't come in was because her father had gotten hit by a car and died. So literally understand, nothing is off limits for this woman. Nothing is sacred. She has no boundaries about what she'll lie about. Most normal people will lie here and there, right? But they have certain things that they won't lie about, like, loved ones dying or having some terminal illness or being sexually assaulted, because in their hearts they know it's not right and it's going too far. And plus, human beings are highly superstitious. Doesn't matter if you're religious or atheist or agnostic, people are still very much aware of forces in this universe that they can't control or even understand. So usually most people aren't trying to invite that kind of karma or negative energy. But I do feel that Letecia Stauch is a demon from the bowels of hell, and negative energy is what she lives for, right? She feeds off of it. It makes her stronger. She's the devil. I mean, look at this stupid bitch over here in the courtroom. Her skin is glowing. Her hair's never been longer or thicker. She seems perfectly content and at peace, front and center, during a tragic circus that she single-handedly created. Oh, and by the way, like I mentioned earlier, she's laughing and smiling with her attorneys, but as soon as the jury returns to the courtroom, she's all solemn again, her head bowed, her eyes downturned, like, let me hide myself from your gaze. Like, ugh, I hate her. Like I said before, I've said before this a million times, and now I see other people are making the comparison, like other YouTubers, but I was the first one who did it. Letecia Stauch is who Casey Anthony wanted to be when she grew up, okay? They are the same person. They lie about everything, and they lie to get out of lies, and they lie and lie and lie and more lies, and it just never ends. It never ends with these two women. They are the same person. But let's talk about what Letecia did to try and get her way, to try and get Al to leave his job in Alaska because she hated it there. Al even said that T used to tell him that she hated Alaska so much she felt the U.S. should give it back to the Russians. We should give you back to the Russians. I mean, I'm sure they got some crazy-ass experiments they could use on you. All right, after Letecia goes to the Kremlin, we won't see her for a few years, and then when she pops back up, she'll be like a half human, half fish because the Russians are trying to create some human submarine spies or some shit like that. But knowing her, though, she'd probably twist it and find a way to use this to her benefit and market herself as the real-life Ariel from The Little Mermaid or something. Like, oh my God, I hate her. Anyways, let's talk about what Al said Letecia did. Actually, I'll let him tell you.
So Al, we were just getting into whether the defendant manipulated your assignment to Alaska. Did she, well, let me ask you this. There was a point in time where she raised sexual harassment claims that caused tension for you in your command in Alaska. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did that involve a Corporal Jenkins and a Lieutenant Colonel Ortega?
Captain Jenkins and yes. Lieutenant
Captain
Colonel.
Jenkins.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I had asked you before whether she was happy being assigned, having you all living up in Alaska, and I think you said no.
Absolutely not. Yes.
Did this claim of sexual harassment, not asking you whether it was true or not, but did that lead to you eventually leaving Alaska and coming to Colorado?
Yes, sir, it did.
Were there two specific things that you witnessed that were sort of at the heart of these sexual harassment claims?
Yes, sir.
Did one of those involve Captain Jenkins?
Yes, sir.
Was that a time when you were at some establishment and there was some drinking involved?
Yeah, me and the defendant showed up for dinner and The other person was already there and had been drinking. Yes, sir.
The other person being Captain
Captain
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes, sir.
Was that one of the issues that the defendant raised as the basis for sexual harassment?
That situation, yes, sir, a comment he had made.
Okay. And we're not calling Captain Jenkins, so we don't need to get into what he said.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then as it relates to Colonel Ortega, did you witness a specific event that was an interaction between Lieutenant Colonel Ortega and the defendant?
Yes, sir.
What was that specific thing?
Let me describe the event.
Yes,
So
that you witnessed.
I was the S1, which is the personnel officer for the battalion. Lieutenant Colonel Ortega was the battalion commander. I was still in the office. The defendant was coming to pick me up because we only had one vehicle in Alaska. And she was coming from the house to pick me up. And when I came out of the building, he was leaning over into the truck, talking to her. I don't know what they were talking about or anything. And then as soon as he saw me, he left, didn't stop and, communicate with me, just left and walked away. And that was it.
Okay. And so did the defendant specifically use that incident as another part of the allegation of sexual harassment?
Yes, sir.
Did she inform the National Guard of this complaint of sexual harassment?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that?
Yes, sir.
Did that cause you issues in your unit?
Yes, sir.
And did that eventually lead to you transferring from Alaska?
Yes, sir.
Was there a time when she specifically sent you a text and told you that she was pregnant?
Yes.
And did that text also include a ultrasound picture?
Yes.
Did she tell you that she was actually pregnant with twins?
Yes, sir.
Was that another form of manipulation?
Yes, sir.
Sustained. You can ask him how he felt
Sure.
about it.
Did the defendant ever give birth to twins?
No, sir.
Did it ever turn out that she was pregnant with twins?
No, sir.
Sustained. Jury will disregard that answer.
Well, did you ever go to any doctor's appointments with the defendant?
For that specific instance, no.
Okay. Do you know whether she went to any doctor's appointments for that specific incident?
I'm confident that she didn't. No, sir.
During the trial and for much of Al's testimony, they're sticking to what Al saw and witnessed and what he knew to be a fact. And he can't really say what Letecia told him or what others told him because that would be hearsay. So what we learned is Letecia accused some of Al's colleagues on the military base of sexual harassment. Now listen, I'm not saying sexual harassment and sexual assault don't happen in the military, because we know it does. All of that stuff certainly happens. But once again, I'm saying that she has lied about this stuff so much that I don't believe her. I also know that shortly before she killed Gannon, while she was still married to Al Stauch, she was online looking for men. She was Googling things like find real military singles and find a rich husband who will pay me to take care of his kids. I don't think there was any sexual harassment. Okay? If anything, I believe that if there was any flirtation happening, it was because Letecia initiated it. But that's not the only thing Letecia did to get Al out of Alaska. Yo, I just said get Al out of Alaska, which would be Aska. Because if you take the Al out of Alaska, get it? You have Aska. Anyways, from Al's testimony, what I'm getting is that he ended up leaving Alaska not because he was mad that these guys had sexually harassed his wife, allegedly, but because Letecia had lied about it. She made everything up. She reported these two men to the National Guard, and everyone was mad at Al because his wife was lying. She was a lying bitch who starts trouble for no reason. And so basically he was transferred because of that. Well, I mean, she had a reason. Like, if Letecia was listening to this, she'd be like, hold on, that's invalid. I didn't lie for no reason. I had a reason. I didn't want Al to be in Alaska. I want him to be in Colorado with me. I don't want to move to Alaska. That's my reason. Anyways, yeah. She also pretended she was pregnant with twins, right? She provided a fake ultrasound picture and everything. Nothing is off limits for Letecia to lie about. Not sexual assault, not pregnancy, not deaths of loved ones, not murder. Nothing. I don't believe anything she says because she lies too much, and that's not my fault. It's not my fault that after a dog bites me 17 times, I'm not going to go up and trust that dog anymore. I'm going to say, this dog's probably going to bite me if I pet it again, so I'm just going to admire the dog from afar. It's not my fault that I don't believe Letecia. It's her fault because she lies so much. So Al, Letecia, Gannon, Lena, and Harley all spent Christmas of 2018 in Alaska. T and the kids remained in Alaska, living with Al in a house near the base for about a month, and then T helpfully found a house for rent in Colorado. She and the kids left Alaska and moved to Colorado in January of 2019, and Al would join them there the following month. And then Letecia started making claims of robberies that were happening at the Colorado house, random robberies.
You remember the defendant filing burglary allegations in 2019?
Yes, sir.
How many different ones did she file?
I believe it was 2, to my recollection.
One of those specific claims was a burglary in the fall of 2019, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there were some things that she pointed to you to support that as being a valid burglary claim.
Yes, sir.
One of which was a hammer hanging from a string in the garage.
Yes, sir.
That included potentially somebody had maybe got into the attic access in the garage.
A squatter is how she referred to it.
Was there ever a squatter in your house?
No, sir, no one was ever found.
Did you have an ammo can in the house?
I did, yes, sir.
Was it dumped out on the floor and made to look as if someone had rummaged through it?
Objection. Stained, you can ask him what he found and what it looked like.
Okay. Tell us what you remember about this ammo can.
In this specific break-in allegation, the ammo can, I kept it, I think next to the bed or under the bed or something, and it was open and dumped out like somebody had been rummaging through the ammo can. One of the clothes hampers was dumped out, and the bed was kind of pushed, the mattress was pushed off the box spring, just enough to look like somebody had forced their way through that area.
Did the defendant tell you that that was another piece of evidence or sign that there had been a burglary in your house?
She did.
And I think the whole point of this line of questioning is to show that Letecia Stauch is not mentally ill. She's just a liar, a natural-born liar. And not only does she lie, but she goes to all sorts of dramatic lengths to set up her lies or create supporting evidence to make her lies seem more real, as if she's staging a movie set. I will say, sometimes some funny things do come up during the chat in these trials because they're live streaming initially when they first air on YouTube, and people can chat about them and say what they're thinking. And when Al said that T told him she was afraid a squatter was in the house, someone wrote in the chat, she was the squatter. And I mean, valid. Once again, as I am talking to you about these things happening in the trial, I don't know everything that's to come. I've avoided coverage of it to form my own opinions, but given the timing of all of this, I wonder if the state is going to suggest that Letecia was already planning to kill Gannon in the fall of 2019 when she made all of these weird allegations about burglaries and squatters, and she'd even told Al that she'd fired a gun at an intruder, weird things like that. Given the timing, which would be just a few months before Gannon died, and with all the crazy stories Letecia told afterwards, such as like the Eduardo thing and these criminals taking Gannon, was she trying to build the narrative that their home and their family had already become a target for sketchy individuals, had already been compromised by these sketchy individuals who may have had access to their house? I don't know. We'll see. Next, Al talks about how his wife Letecia convinced him that Gannon needed counseling. And this part pissed me off, man. Whew, I was livid because apparently Letecia had told Al that Gannon was like threatening her. Gannon had disdain towards Letecia. And not only did T say that Gannon had it out for her, she claimed he came after her with a knife. Now things are starting to come into more focus for us because Al even says that out of his 2 children, Letecia was undoubtedly closer to his daughter, Lena.
Did you ever witness Gannon displaying any behavior that would support the claim that Gannon had it out for the defendant?
Absolutely not, towards no one. I absolutely never witnessed that, period.
Did she make a specific comment to you about Gannon and a knife?
Yes, sir.
To you?
Yes, sir.
What was that comment?
Something about he had threatened her with a knife or came at her with a knife.
Did you ever see Gannon threaten anybody with a knife?
No threats ever out of Gannon, knife or no knife.
And was that right before you got Gannon into counseling in 2019?
Yes, sir.
So this does piss me off a little bit because I I have been in a similar situation as Al, having a child from a previous relationship and then introducing a new spouse into the equation. It is a learning experience. It can be tough, but I always tried to have my child's back before all else, especially if I thought that my husband was being unreasonable. Like, there were many times I fought with my husband on behalf of my child where I could have just said, like, I don't want to fight with you. Like, we'll just go along with whatever you want. But I had to stand up for my child and make sure that she knew she came first at the cost of all else. So Al took T's word, I guess, that Gannon was coming at her and like attacked her with a knife, even though he claims he never saw any sign of this with his own eyes. He said, Gannon would never do that, not to her, not to anyone. If you never saw it, if you never saw Gannon act uncouth towards anyone and you knew it wasn't in his nature or who he was, and you knew it was in your wife's nature to be a lying liar who can't stop lying about anything and everything, because by this point she's already lied about burglaries and lied about being pregnant and lied about sexual assaults, why did you believe her? I imagine that Al believing Letecia about this, that sent a message to Gannon. And that message is adults believe each other. No one's going to believe me. I have no voice here. I need to keep my head down and just try to survive in this torturous and abusive environment where both myself and my father are being manipulated and emotionally abused by this evil woman who hurts everyone and seems to get off on the power and control that she's being given. So it's becoming less surprising to me that Gannon wasn't screaming from the rooftops about any abuse he was receiving from T. And Al also talks often about how Gannon was a mama's boy. He loved his mother, Landon. And we know that Letecia hated Landon. She spent so much time on social media after Gannon went missing, talking as much shit about Landon as she could. If there was resentment from Letecia towards Gannon, it wasn't because she mistook him for her childhood demons. It was because she hated her husband's ex-wife. Letecia was jealous of Landon. She was jealous that Landon and Al shared 2 children and a history, something that Letecia did not have with Al, even though she did pretend to be pregnant with twins, try to even the score. And when Letecia looked at Gannon, she saw all of that represented and manifested physically in front of her. She killed Gannon because he was a physical, walking and talking reminder of her husband's past love. And while she figured Lena was young enough to bring to her side, Gannon made it very clear that no one came before his mother. And we know that Letecia, she doesn't like to be second best. She doesn't want to be second choice. We saw from her internet searches how mad she was that Al didn't give her the attention she felt she deserved. Why does my husband clean up for the army but not for me? She asked Google. Because you suck, okay? Because you suck. Because people clean up to go to work, and then when they're at home, they want to just like chill and be relaxed and, not have to put on a huge song and dance for the person that's supposed to be their wife, who's supposed to love them no matter what. That's just my theory, though. Okay? That's just my theory. Letecia was always wanting more attention from Al. She was always jealous of Landon, and she hated Gannon. And if I was Al, I would have said, okay, let's get Gannon some therapy if you really want to, but only if you get therapy as well, because you're crazy, bitch. You need help. Because Al said that Letecia finally did admit to making up the details about the robberies and stuff like that. She admitted once he was like, this doesn't add up. Are you sure? And she was like, oh, I made this up. Al knew she was a compulsive liar. She's the one who needed therapy. Now, listen, I'm not trying to come for Al. I'm truly not. I have so much empathy and sympathy in my heart for him. I cannot imagine what he's going through. And I can only truly hope that one day he finds some peace. I am not upset with him. I'm not blaming him. Not at all. That being said, I'm here for Gannon, the victim, the child who needed someone to tell him, I'm on your side. I'm here for you. I know you're going through a lot, but you can talk to me and tell me anything, and I will fix it for you. Gannon needed to be told that somebody was in his corner, that somebody had his back, so he'd feel comfortable being honest and upfront about what was happening to him. What he didn't need to do was have his stepmother tell lies about how he came at her with a knife, have his father believe him, and then put him in therapy because he believed him. That sends a message, a bad message to a child. So I need to highlight areas where, yes, Gannon's father should have stepped in and put a stop to Letecia's abuse. Hindsight's 20/20, In that moment, Al was most likely doing what he thought he needed to do, like Gannon, to survive from day to day with the crazy asshole that Letecia Stauch is. Hindsight's 20/20, but that doesn't mean we just throw all the knowledge we get from hindsight into the garbage because it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's easy to say that now. You can't go back and change it. Doesn't matter. We don't just throw that away. We need to use that and learn from it. Al said that Letecia was working as a teacher at a few schools, but she hated it so much because, once again, she wasn't getting the respect or the attention she deserved. She was being passed over for leadership positions, etc., etc. And why this school hired her is a whole nother conversation we're going to have, okay? Because they shouldn't have. I think the principal, literally admits, yeah, she gave references, but I never checked them and I just hired her. But anyways, one day Letecia claimed she was at the school and a bookshelf fell on her and gave her a head injury, even though Al said he never saw any signs of this injury and he believed it was just another one of her lies. This is happening, as he's living with her, she's saying things and he's like, she's lying. But he just has to brush it aside and keep moving. So she didn't want to be a teacher anymore, I guess. And in late 2019 into early 2020, Letecia began pursuing a career as a flight attendant with Spirit Airlines. And she allegedly took a short trip to Orlando, Florida at the end of December 2019 for training. Now, at the beginning of 2020, the weekend of January 25th and 26th, remember Al's going away for training. Al testified that he and Letecia were not doing well as far as their marriage went. This was also the last time that Al saw Gannon alive before he left for the airport to fly to Oklahoma.
Yeah, he was, we were at the top of the stairs and I was getting ready to leave with Mom. And me and Gannon were at the top of the stairs, and I just gave him a hug, and I always used to rub my fingers through his hair and just told him I love you. And something I would always tell the kids when I had to leave or when they would go back to their mom's house was you're always going to be in my heart, and I'm always going to be in your heart. And I'll see you when I get back. And he's like, okay, Daddy, love you, and I'm going to finish watching Pokemon. I remember it like it was yesterday.
And you can tell for some time after this, Al is having a hard time on the stand answering questions, which is more than understandable after remembering the last time he saw Gannon. I mean, I have an 11-year-old son. It hurts me to relive that with him. So I completely get it. And the prosecutor does ask Al a lot of questions about certain trips that he took with his family, trips he took with Letecia alone, trips to Hawaii, the Caribbean cruises, trips Letecia took alone, trips she took with Harley, things like that. And I'm not sure what the relevance is yet, but I know there must be some relevance because the state keeps bringing it up 3 times on day 2 so far. And at this point, we're about 2.5 hours in. The entire trial lasted over 8 hours that day, day 2. Al testified about arguments that he and Letecia had about finances because of the lifestyle that she wanted.
I mean, a classic example is she always compared herself and wanted to be like Kim Kardashian. That was kind of her main thing she looked towards. I think a best way to sum it up is always wanted to live above our means.
To live above your means.
Yes, sir. That's a good way to sum it up.
Did you agree to being living above your means?
There was examples where I gave and there was examples where I didn't.
So, I mean, Letecia wanted to be like Kim Kardashian, which is a red flag all on its own, but we're going to talk more about that later. So Al starts talking about searching for Gannon and how he and Letecia went out driving together to search for Gannon. And as he was talking, I was really impacted by this because as a parent, how panicked Al was, how he was looking so hard for his son, and probably how he would feel this prick of hope every time he saw a boy around Gannon's age who maybe looked a little like Gannon, maybe the same hair color, maybe the same sort of walk or something, and he would drive up to that little boy or run up to that little boy only to feel that crushing and crumpling feeling inside when he realized that it wasn't Gannon and that glimmer of hope died, and to know that Letecia was by his side during this, to know the person who was responsible for taking your child from you sat next to you and she knew the whole time they weren't going to find Gannon. But she sat next to you and let you go through this torture over and over again. She is truly an evil, evil person.
The first day, which would have been Tuesday, 28th, left the airport and then came home and just got somewhat organized. And then there was a story about Gannon running away or walking away. And there was somebody said they might have seen him at a gas station in Fountain. And so
let me ask you specifically. You don't know whether that was a true statement or not, correct?
in the moment I didn't, no.
Okay. But did that cause you to go do things to see if that was in fact a legitimate sighting of Gannon?
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
Myself and the defendant in my truck, my red Nissan truck, drove to that gas station. I went in, I think I met the officer there, if I remember correctly, and went in and watched he allowed me to watch the footage of what boy that was alleged to be Gannon coming in and out of the store, and so I could confirm if it was him or not.
Was it Gannon?
It was not. It was another boy with his father that or whatever, another boy with an older man.
Just wasn't Gannon.
It just was not Gannon, no, sir.
What else did you specifically do to look for Gannon?
There was times when after the day was over, I'd drive around at night just seeing if I could spot him. That specific, I believe it was Tuesday as well, I had been downtown to the sheriff's office, given an interview, and then came back home and checked on the girls, being Harley and Lena, and then told them I was going out searching again, and went to the Walmart in Fountain. I was heading to the Walmart in Fountain. Just maybe he's in the video game section or GameStop or something. Just thinking of places he would be. And then it occurred to me, or I remembered that the defendant had said her car was at French Elementary School. And so I never actually went to Walmart. I went directly to French Elementary School to look for her vehicle.
And you previously told us that you didn't see her vehicle there.
Absolutely not. I drove around the school 3 times just to make sure I wasn't missing it.
Did she ever tell you where her car actually was?
Never did. That was the only thing she ever told me, was that I left it at French Elementary School.
At some point, based on things that you're learning, did you, in your mind, did it change from Gannon didn't come home from a friend's house to something different?
That was really the key moment. There was a lot of things we've discussed, a number of them, some discrepancies in the pictures, the rent-a-car situation. I think I had already known at that point that I had talked to my neighbors and surveillance from their house. He had never walked.
Sustained.
Well, I think what he's describing, Judge, is what he saw on surveillance.
You can't talk about what your neighbor said to you, but you can describe what you saw on the surveillance tape. Okay.
So 2 different circumstances. This is not the surveillance tape of the truck. This is.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you have an occasion to see surveillance video from neighbors in your neighborhood? Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see Gannon ever walking away on those videos from your house and never returning?
I did not. No, sir.
Okay. So you were earlier describing an accumulation of things that led you to change your opinion or your mind as to what actually happened with Gannon.
Yes, sir.
And you said, I think one of the big things was the defendant telling you that her car was at French, you go to French, and it's not there.
Yes, sir.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was the key moment when I switched from she knows more than she's telling me she knows.
So that was the key moment for Al, as he testified, the moment he felt that Letecia knew more than she was saying. He'd viewed the surveillance from his neighbor's house. Roderick Drayton, I believe, that's the same neighbor who had the surveillance of Letecia leaving on Monday morning and returning Monday afternoon, January 27th. Al had seen that Gannon didn't leave and go to a friend's house, as Letecia had claimed. He saw that Letecia wasn't out looking for Gannon, as she had claimed. And this is kind of around the time when Al goes to the police and told them, listen, something's not right. And he sort of started working with law enforcement to see if he could get Letecia to tell the truth or slip up to implicate herself. Al doesn't really say that he confronted Letecia with these inaccuracies in her story, specifically her car not being at the school and not seeing Gannon leave to go to his friend's house on surveillance, because he says that on Tuesday, January 28th, he slept on the couch, and when he woke up the next morning, Wednesday, January 29th, Letecia approached him with a new story about what had happened to Gannon, and this is because obviously she figured out that not only is Al suspicious of her, but there's physical evidence that existed out there showing that her original story was not true.
I slept on the couch. She called me into the room, and then she proceeded to tell me a story about how a man got in the house somehow. I don't remember that specific version, but he got in the house, raped her, abused her, beat her, and then beat Gannon up and took Gannon. And you want me to keep going on that specific?
I want you to tell what she said in that particular story.
Right. And then she also said he had got burned and that. And then she said that, I said, well, where's everything at? Like all the mess, the blood and everything. She said, well, I cleaned it up. I got scared. And so, okay, well, where's the bloody mess, the clothes, the rags, whatever. Well, I disposed of it. Well, where did you dispose of it? It wasn't in the trash can at the house. It was somewhere else. And it was just this long string of stuff.
Al talks about how, he started working with local law enforcement and the FBI. They set him up to talk to Letecia on the phone while he was at the FBI office so that he could ask her questions and the law enforcement agents could be listening in. Now, this leads us into the calls that the FBI recorded, calls between Al and Letecia. And on day 2, the jury heard cumulatively 2 hours of these calls, which I obviously cannot play for you. I can't play all of them for you, at least, but I can play some small clips and give you a summary of these calls. But from what I can tell, these phone calls started around February 13th, 2020, the ones that are recorded. And at this point, Gannon had been missing for about 2 weeks. So Letecia and Harley were no longer living in the family home. Neighbor Roderick Drayton had publicly released his surveillance video, and Letecia had acted thoroughly suspicious and had shown her ass so much that law enforcement had already put her and her daughter Harley under surveillance, right? And this covert surveillance began around January 30th, 2020. So literally within days of Letecia reporting Gannon missing, the police were onto her. Now, I hear the specifics of this surveillance are going to be discussed later on in the trial, like how they were surveilling Letecia and Harley and what her movements were. I honestly can't wait until we get there. But before we dive into the calls, let's talk about the gaslighting text messages that Letecia sent Al in the early morning hours of, I believe, January 27th. So it was January 27th, which would have been a Monday, the day that Gannon didn't go to school. And these texts started around 2:48 a.m. So basically Sunday night going into Monday morning and then continuing into Monday.
What does that text message say that was sent to you?
It says he is in the bathroom again and blood coming out butthole, and he is crying about going to school tomorrow like this. And he is still upset about the candle accident. I told him it's fine and that as long as he was okay, not to worry about something minor we can fix, and let's worry about his stomach hurting.
So when the text message in your mind says he is, who is the he is in that text message?
Gannon.
How do you know that?
Because I don't know if it's in these text message thread, but we had discussed his that specific stomach incident previously already in this general time frame.
Okay. So based on context, you were able to determine that at least from the defendant's phone, is a text saying that Gannon is bleeding out of his butt.
Yes.
Can you find a text at 8:10 a.m. that has a reference to lighting a candle, Gannon lighting a candle? Well, do you generally remember getting a text from the defendant's phone referencing that Gannon lit a candle because because of the smell from poop?
Yes, I remember that.
Was that odd to you that purportedly Gannon would light a candle?
Yeah, I don't remember him ever playing or lighting candles on his own accord.
Okay.
If he was directed to, maybe, but never, going in and doing that on his own.
Next thing I want to ask you about is, were you aware from the defendant about the defendant taking Gannon and Lena hiking at Garden of the Gods on the 26th?
Sir.
What did the defendant tell you about that hiking trip?
I believe there was some talk about him pooping in his pants or having an accident during that hiking, somewhere in that afternoon that they went hiking.
Did the defendant express any frustration with that incident?
I don't remember, I don't know if frustration is right word. I don't remember what the feeling was that she displayed, but there was a conversation about it.
Well, how would you characterize the way that she was expressing that story to you?
I mean, I can speak more generally. I just know that it was always a frustrating or she didn't like to have to clean it up or deal with that part of Gannon.
Having to clean up after?
When he had an accident.
Okay. We already had previously talked about, you got a text message on the 28th in the morning, 2 text messages actually with those pictures of Gannon in bed.
From the bedroom, yes, sir.
Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I hate how they go out of order during these trials sometimes. I don't know if it's purposeful, but they do bounce around all the time, and it drives me crazy. So let's organize the timeline a bit. T texted Al on the 26th of January. She said that she and Gannon and Lena had gone on a hike, and Gannon had an accident. And Al said that generally T was very frustrated when Gannon would have accidents because she didn't like to clean them up. This is when she sends him a picture of her and Gannon and, like smiling and everyone's happy. When, oh, when could this picture have been taken, as her lawyer, Will Cook, would say. That night, a little bit before 3 a.m., T sent Al a text message saying that Gannon's stomach was hurt, he was bleeding, he didn't want to go to school the next morning, and he was still upset about the candle incident, which we find out that allegedly stemmed from Gannon lighting a candle, which Al says is not something he would usually do. And then on the morning of January 27th, Al received 2 pictures of Gannon in bed. Now, the prosecutor says the morning of the 28th, but that would be impossible because Al got picked up from the airport by Letecia on the morning of the 28th, and Gannon was reported missing on the evening of the 27th, so I don't know what's going on there, but I got you with the correct timeline. I think that the prosecutor was probably just confused about the dates and misspoke. Okay, let's dive into the calls. The first one starts off pretty normally, like a typical conversation between husband and wife. Letecia is playing the victim, saying, oh, I haven't eaten, I'm starving, the police took my purse and my credit cards, and this, and that. After about 10 to 15 minutes of Letecia complaining about the police and the media and the public and everybody's mean to me, Al asks her, okay, we're supposed to be talking about the timeline. You said that you would talk to me and explain this stuff to me so I can make sense of it all. And she has the audacity, Dr. T has the audacity to be sassy with Al when he interrupts her briefly to clarify and try to muddle through her constant nonsensical ramblings.
But yeah, let's just timeline, because I want to hear your timeline so I can try to make sense of it.
Saturday, okay? You said you wouldn't question, you would just listen.
Saturday, hold on. Tisha, Saturday, like, what do you mean Saturday? Like, right before me and Mama left? Saturday?
After you left.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
Alright, so I'm gonna just go through certain things. I'm not gonna read it verbatim how he did it, because it would be more of like in law terms, but, key one, Albert and his mom left for Denver. We put DEN in there. Around the house, cleaned up, G helped with stuff. Helped me get stuff out of his car. Gannon's always barefooted because that was something that he asked me. Even taking the trash out, things like that. He took the trash out. He stepped on something in the garage. So my car parked. You had those boards that were underneath my car, right?
Yeah.
Gannon was going to go help because he was saying that there was some kind of piece out there that was going to help me. You know the little zip ties that you have on things and it's hard to get off?
Yeah.
So he knew where something for that to go pop this off. So he was going to go get it because I had bought them some things from the clearance store. All right, so Gannon cut his foot on those boards. We flipped the boards over because we were freaking out because I was like, oh my God, your daddy said don't get oil or anything from your car leaked on those boards. You know what boards I'm talking about?
The one, like the 2x4s that I have, like that you drive over to park in the garage or whatever. Yeah.
So I let Gannon sit down in the back of the car. You know how funny I am about my car. But also, we just bandaged it up, whatever. All we did was stick a bandage on it, whatever. And I said something to him about, Gannon, you gotta quit coming out here barefooted, which I do the same thing. I take dogs out barefooted anyway.
Hey, let me ask you, hold on, wait a second. I'm just thinking here, and I'm going to listen to everything. Just something that popped in my head. He always goes out the front door to do the trash. That's so weird.
But he was helping me unload. Like, I had bought them a bunch of stuff in the clearance store. If you look in the garage.
I got you. Okay, I thought you said take out the trash. I'm sorry.
Let me explain this to you. There's 2 bags that was put in the garage because I had put a bunch of stuff in there. I went and bought them a bunch of crap that went on sale from the clearance store because they were changing over to like warm weather stuff. But obviously in Colorado, you can still wear the cold weather stuff. Which I saw Lena online wearing, so therefore I knew it was in the house.
First of all, does this honestly sound like a woman who completely snapped and her alter ego or her second personality brutally murdered an 11-year-old boy? Does it? Or does this sound like a woman who knows what she did and is trying to hide it at all costs, is trying to convince everyone by any means necessary that she's innocent? Keep in mind, she's lying right now, right? She's lying. Now we know that. Hindsight, again. But if you didn't know that, you wouldn't know that, right? Does that make sense? Like if you were just listening to her with all these small details she's putting in, like the clearance store, and they were getting rid of their warm weather stuff and bringing their cold weather stuff, all these like random little details she's pulling in. If you were just listening, you would be like, yeah, this sounds legit. It sounds like she knows what she's talking about. and talking about how Gannon was always barefoot. You know Gannon's always barefoot when he goes outside, and, he's helpful and he takes the garbage out. And, the casual and quick way she's telling the story is if she actually lived through it and it's not completely fabricated, you would believe she was telling the truth. And that's scary. She lies as easily as she breathes. She lies as if she's telling the truth. That's very dangerous. And it's an indication of someone who is completely in charge of herself because she realizes how high the stakes are. And there's a bunch of red flags happening here. First of all, she doesn't want Al to interrupt her and ask her clarifying questions because she has a story in her head and she doesn't want to have to divert from that story, right? And if he asks her questions, she may not have a prepared answer for the question that he's asking, and that could pose a problem for her. So she wants to just get it all out, and she's reading off of notes. She's reading off of notes that she wrote down. She's not recalling from memory. She's reading off of notes, which is what she did when she went in for her police interview, which is why they were suspicious of her initially, because they were like, this is your story. This happened to you. If you've got to read it off of a piece of paper, that's a little suspicious. And she keeps going through the timeline, and then sometimes she'll pull Al back in, like, remember that picture I sent you? Remember that thing in the garage? Remember when I messaged you that his stomach was hurting, etc.? She's trying to, place Al in the timeline, even though he wasn't there. She's trying to make him feel like he was there, like he was a part of it, right? Which is brilliant. It's a brilliant lying. She also starts talking about the candle incident. She said that Gannon dropped a candle and the alarm started going off and she ran down and there was smoke all over and she couldn't figure out where the fire was coming from. And then she saw that it was Gannon. He was on fire. His blanket that was on top of him was on fire. So she threw herself on the flame, but it was too late because Gannon had already been burnt. Listen to Letecia Stauch, full-time supermom, part-time superhero, putting out fires figuratively and literally with her own body.
I run back downstairs and realized that there's smoke downstairs. I couldn't get it. I was coughing and choking and couldn't get through the smoke part. Run back to the garage. You had these little mouthpieces that you could put over your mouth.
Yeah, dust protectors, whatever.
So I grabbed one of those, put it over my mouth, ran back downstairs, and when I ran back downstairs, again, I was still asleep, not knowing this was going on, and there was fire. I took the cover. There was a whole bunch of tons of cover that was inside that little tan thing and Gannon had on or whatever, and I just jumped on them. I don't know if that was the right thing to do. If it was the wrong thing to do, I'm sorry. But I just jumped on it and kept jumping on it, and Gannon was right in one of the covers. So Gannon did burn his arms. It wasn't bad. It was almost like, how you get a little bit of oil on it and it's just underneath the skin, but as long as y'all peel it, it's fine.
Yeah, but hey, Tisha, which arm was it? Both arms or this inside? I mean, but how was it? So, because I remember we talked about that before a little bit, but we never got it.
I feel like it was across the arms. I feel like it was, and I told the investigators this. I said, and I don't want to skip to this part, miss this part. But remind me that. Say this later. I told the investigators later that I said I probably should have looked a little more in depth at his arm.
What if he's hurt? Yeah.
Because it could have been, he wasn't complaining oh, it's hurting. He wasn't saying anything along those lines. But I should have looked a little bit more in depth. But honestly, we ran. So we ran out. I'm sure they got the footage of us. Me running out first. Because Gannon was grabbing his cover, running out behind there because he was cold.
Hey, what time was this? So I can maybe tell somebody to look at the footage.
Well, I mean, I told them originally. I don't have access to the ADT now, but I told them because the ADT said it had an alert for fire. So I would imagine whenever that alert went off from ADT, it would have been within that few minutes.
Yeah, fine. I got you.
15 minutes.
Hey, tell me about it. So I'm really concerned about these burns because, he's freaking hurt. What? What were they big? Were they small? What was it? Was it from the candle wax or what?
Let me get to that part. It's not going to worry you in a minute when I get to that part.
Okay, because I'm freaking out right now because.
I understand. So when he runs to the car, he runs in because I'm running. He's running behind me. I jump in your truck. The only reason jumping in your truck is the keys were laying there.
First of all, did you hear what she said? She says something that I think makes her entire story not plausible. She says she he smells smoke and the alarm's going off. And she's like trying to figure out where the fire is, where the smoke's coming from. She goes down and Gannon's blanket that's on him is on fire and he's asleep. So he doesn't notice. So she throws herself on him to put the fire on. She's like, I don't know. If that was the wrong thing to do, I'm sorry. But I didn't know what else to do. Like, I put myself in. She don't got no burns, okay? But Gannon does. From the fire that was on him while he was asleep. But apparently he also knocked the candle over that caused the fire. So what happened? He knocked the candle over, then went to sleep? Wait, candle knocked over? Right to sleep? Get the fuck out of here. All right, so Letecia says that Gannon's arms were burned. She says, it wasn't that bad. So that's why I didn't get him medical help. That's why I didn't call anybody. And because Al's asking her, like, well, why didn't you call somebody? Like, now I'm worried about this. And she's like, it wasn't that bad. But then she makes a comment that the skin's bubbling, right? She says she saw that Gannon has some bubbly spots on the skin of both of his arms. So that sounds pretty bad to me. It sounds like at least second-degree burns. The thing that pisses me off as we're going through these calls is Letecia. Letecia's ass sitting in the courtroom, head down, both hands covering both ears like a child who didn't want to be yelled at. Okay, she doesn't want to hear her own voice telling these obvious and blatant lies. And Al asks a simple question, like, these burns, what were they from? Fire? Candle wax? And she's like, oh no, don't interrupt my story. I'll get there in a minute, but I can't lose my train of thought here. Like, it's an easy question to answer. Dude, like, all you have to say is, like, it was from the fire or it was from the wax. Like, you'd know. If you know and you can tell him in a minute, you can tell him now and then get back to her story, okay? But she doesn't want to, remember? Because she can't be diverted from her story because she has to get it out exactly right. And, like, the story she had to get back to, right, that she couldn't answer that question, it's, like, not even, there's no point to it. She just keeps going on and on, like, oh, the fire wasn't that bad. It was mainly smoke. We ran to your truck. We drove around the block. I was in shock. And then we went back in the house, and I put Lena to bed, blah, 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 blah. Does she ever answer the question that Al asked? Was it, like, the flame or the candle wax that burned Gannon's arms? The one she was going to answer in a minute? I don't think so. I didn't hear her answer it, and honestly, I don't understand the whole story. Like, I literally don't. I know I said this already, but how does Gannon knock over the candle, set himself on fire, but he's asleep before he's on fire? And how does he not wake up when he feels that he's on fire or he hears the smoke alarm? So this is starting to make more sense to me, hearing her in the video and hearing her ask Gannon, are you sure you didn't do it on purpose? Are you sure? He probably was sleeping when she set him on fire. He probably had no idea what was going on, and he thought that she was telling him the truth. He thought he had knocked over the candle because he woke up on fire and Letecia was yelling at him that he had knocked the candle over. If you wake up on fire and somebody's standing in front of you being like, why did you knock this candle over on yourself? You're going to be like confused and you're half asleep. You don't know what the hell's going on. And you might just assume that that's what happened, right? Like, because you can hear him say in the video, like, I promise I didn't do it on purpose. He doesn't even know what he did. I do not believe that I don't believe he knocked that candle over. I think she purposely set him on fire. Okay, I think she was torturing him. She was abusing him. She was hurting him because she got pleasure from it. And I think that eventually she killed him because she went too far. The torture and the abuse went too far, and she knew that she couldn't hide it any longer. And that's why she killed him. But later in the call, Letecia tells Al that Gannon explained to her what had happened, right? He explained later what had happened. She said Gannon loved playing his Nintendo Switch, and he'd been grounded from it, but he was playing it that night, and he thought he heard Letecia coming, so he got scared and tried to hide the Switch, knocking over the candle in the process. But how in the world did he hide the Switch, knock over the candle, and fall asleep in time for the blanket on top of him to be on fire and him not to notice it at all? Because Letecia said she knew there was a fire because the alarm was going off, not because Gannon was yelling help or fire, because the alarm was going off. But maybe T does say something true in this call.
Honestly, I flipping lost my mind.
Okay, yeah, that's it. I think that's the only true thing she's ever said. And during this call, Al keeps asking Letecia about Gannon's burns, his injuries. Why didn't Letecia do anything for him after he was on fire? Did she put something on him? Did she give him Tylenol for the pain or something?
So I didn't see anything that would have thrown a flag that I had to be like, oh my God, emergency or think like that. I didn't see anything like that.
But if his arms was bubbling, that's not an emergency?
Well, it hadn't broke skin. Like, it was just like underneath. It hadn't broke skin or whatever.
Yeah, so she doesn't make any sense. She claims she saw the skin on Gannon's arm bubbling, but in the next breath, she says she didn't see anything that would, let her know this was an emergency. And then Letecia addresses the candle video that was released to the media, the one she took with her own phone and the one she released to the public. And she says she doesn't like the way the public perceived her in this short clip that she willingly released to them, okay? And people have always been really confused about why Letecia did this. Why did she take it? Why did she release it? Why did she want everyone to see this video? Because objectively, she sounds like a complete bitch in this video. She sounds, at the very least, emotionally abusive, and no one could understand why she would bring that scrutiny on herself. And I've always said that I believe her reasoning for doing this was twofold. One, she felt releasing this video would support her narrative in some way. It would offer proof of life. It would show that Gannon was a troublemaker and that she was patient and kind because, yes, I believe that Letecia Stauch, Dr. T, thought she sounded patient and kind in that video. And that brings us to the second reason that I believe she released the video. She thought the video made her look good. She didn't think there was anything wrong with the way she was talking to Gannon or what she was saying to him, and that's a red flag. Because if you think that kind of behavior is okay, what are you doing behind the scenes when the camera isn't rolling? Here's Letecia explaining why every one of us idiots misinterpreted the video and what she was doing and what she was saying in it. We just got it all wrong, okay? We didn't understand the context behind it.
Someone said something because I said sell the couch. I wasn't talking about sell the couch to fix the daggone carpet. I was talking about, I would get rid of that couch and get a new couch. Don't panic. My point was, honestly, I wasn't even going to tell you because I was like, Gannon was scared of being grounded a year. And I was like, I'll buy a new couch. We'll fix the couch. We'll replace everything in here. Don't worry about it.
So you heard her. She claimed that she wasn't telling Gannon they needed to sell the couch to fix the carpet. She was saying this to comfort him and let him know that this could be fixed. Let's listen to that candle video one more time, just to verify her story.
Are you sure you didn't do it on purpose?
He did it.
Okay, you promise. You promise.
On purpose.
Pinky promise.
Pinky.
Okay, all right. So listen. We're gonna have to sell stuff to fix it. Okay. So we figure out what we gotta sell. We can sell the sofa. We can sell whatever, because we gotta get it fixed. So, lady, don't be mad at us and kick us out of the house. Okay. You got it?
I wanted you to hear again how devastated Gannon sounds. His voice is completely defeated. He's so sad. I feel my heart shatter anew every time I hear his little sad and lonely voice in that video. But I also wanted you to hear her say, we have to find stuff to sell to fix this so the lady doesn't kick us out, meaning the landlord. She is such a piece of garbage, compulsively lying scum of the earth, evil monster. And honestly, if anyone deserves to be put to death for their crimes, Letecia Stauch does. And I am so over people like her trying to convince the rest of us that they're not as bad as they seem because bad things happen to them. Honestly, the rest of the call is just much of the same, right? She's lying about everything. She makes herself seem as if she did everything right, or at least everything she could have done. And she continues to bring up the topic of, how everyone's been critical of her, and it's not fair. If we wanted to analyze everything she said, we could. There'd be plenty to talk about, but it's just so repetitive, and honestly, it's so sad. Knowing that Al had to sit there and listen to her, knowing that she was definitely responsible and he had to sit there and listen to her. So there's just a few moments I'd like to highlight. For instance, Letecia says that as Gannon slept through the night, the bubbling on his skin turned into blistering. And then as he moved in his sleep, the blisters broke and he got blood on his bed and on his wall. And she was picking the skin off of his arms. That's what she said. She said that he was purposely peeling the skin off of his arms as it blistered because everyone with a fresh and painful burn would do that. She talks about it like it's a sunburn. Okay, clearly this woman's never had a bad burn in her life, because the day after, hours later, you're not picking a fresh, raw burn like that. Now, listen to Al Stauch stop her in her tracks when she says this, because the police have already been in the house. The CSI team has already processed Gannon's bedroom by the time this phone call is happening. And because of the arrest affidavit, we know what they found. Quote, investigators believe that Gannon was murdered by Letecia Stauch in the afternoon hours after approximately 2:41 p.m. of January 27, 2020 at his residence, and more specifically in his bedroom. Physical evidence recovered from the residence and inside Gannon's bedroom supports that a violent event occurred in his bedroom which caused bloodshed, including blood spatter on the walls and enough blood loss to stain the mattress, soak through the carpet pad, and stain the concrete below his bed, end quote. Now, I don't know if Al knew this information at the time that he was on this call with Letecia, but we know that he was with law enforcement officials while he was on the call. Gannon bled so much that his blood went through his blankets, went through his mattress, went through the bed, and stained the concrete floor underneath his bed. Okay? And she's going to try to set the narrative of why his blood's there by saying he burned himself by spilling the candle, and then he picked his own blisters and then got blood all over the wall and the bed.
On the side, you said on the side of his wall? You never told me that.
No, I told detectives this.
Oh,
You never talked to me about this.
okay, fair, fine. I'm just, this is new. I've never heard that before, so now I'm even more worried about him.
So they should have told you this. So then I went in there that morning, sent you a picture. I said, Gannon, why do you have blood on your wall? I was like, it wasn't a lot. Don't panic. It wasn't like.
Oh, so it wasn't like a lot, like all over the place? It was just like a little streaks or something?
Letecia also goes off on different tangents about Eduardo again. She talks about a carpet guy. She talks about Gannon going in and out of the gate because remember he's the only one who's got the gate key and he's going in and out of the gate. And she said he maybe gave the carpet guy a key to the gate. And then just literally 25 minutes of ridiculousness before Letecia breaks down and starts sobbing, saying that she wants her life back and she's innocent. And the only reason she cleaned up the crime scene was because of the sexual assault that happened to her. And when Al tries to clarify what she means by cleaned up, she starts getting all high pitched, and screechy, and goes directly into victim mode.
Are people not going after this? Why?
I don't know. Maybe the FBI is. I don't know. I know they're doing everything they can. Maybe they missed some things we don't know. But listen, something you told me that first day that I'm trying to figure out when did you do the, like you said you cleaned everything up?
Cleaned everything up?
Yeah, from Gannon's room or wherever you got, somebody did bad things to you or whatever.
I was just talking about the clothes I had on and shoes and stuff.
Oh, so you just changed your clothes and then threw them away like you said, and whatever Gannon had on, you said you threw that away too?
They got that out of the back of the trash. It was a shirt that he wore that was burnt and stuff like that.
Oh.
That's what I meant, cleaned up. I didn't mean clean up anything bad or anything. I'm just saying I didn't want to keep that stuff on and call it police.
But you told me that first day you cleaned up the whole area because you didn't want Lena to see it when she got home. That's what you told me.
Yeah, my clothes and my underwear. You want me to really go in depth about that?
I'm not trying to make you relive anything that happened to you. I'm just trying to. There's just some truth that I'm trying to find about. I mean, if something was cleaned up or something, then I don't know. Maybe.
Me. Whatever you're trying to say to me, just be honest.
I just don't want the police to miss anything else, okay? I mean, we think they've missed all these other pieces, and then, if you cleaned up something that could give them DNA evidence on this Mexican guy, then we need it.
Letecia does many things consistently throughout this call. She lies, and she blames Gannon for everything. She not only murdered him, but not even a month later, she was attempting to murder his memory and his reputation. An 11-year-old boy. She's using this pretend trauma to avoid answering questions honestly. She literally says, do you really want me to go through all of this again? I can't relive this fake assault that never happened that she made up to cover up the brutal murder of an actual defenseless child, a brutal murder that she committed. Okay, if it's one thing I hate, it's a bitch who makes up a sexual assault to get out of trouble. Okay? Don't like it. Or to not have to answer for the things that she's done. You made that up. You lied about it. There's evidence and proof that you lied about it. Okay? It's disgusting. It's disgusting what she's doing. And you can hear her. She's like, ah! And then 2 seconds later, she's like, just tell me what you want to say straight. Just give it to me straight, Al. Like, she's so freaking hysterically crying 1 second. And the next second, she's like so pissed off. Like, just tell me. Completely calm, completely fine. Letecia also talks about how much Gannon bleeds all the time. You know, he gets nosebleeds all the time. She says to Al, hey, don't you remember when you got the nosebleed in your truck? And Al's like, no. And she gets pissed at him. She has the audacity to pull out some righteous indignation. Here, I'll show you.
Gannon bleeds all the time.
Right.
Gannon has huge nosebleeds. Did you tell him the nosebleeds from your truck is from Gannon?
When did he have a nosebleed in my truck?
Oh my God, don't even play. It's been there since Alaska. And the top part of your truck, you have, his hands had blood marks on it from like a year and something ago.
Maybe. I'm not doubting you. I don't know. I just don't remember that, but that might have happened. I know he has had a nosebleed once in a while. I don't remember that in Alaska.
Nosebleeds are like in Colorado, or at least once every week or two. Every week or two, Gannon has a nosebleed. This is where I get angry. Like, people come up here and talk all this shit, and they don't even know him.
She says, this is why I get angry, because these people come up here, they're talking all this shit. They don't even know him. Gannon. She's talking about Gannon. They don't even know Gannon. No doubt, Letecia's clearly pissed during this phone call, but it's not because people didn't know Gannon. It's because she's been lying all of her life. And I think, honestly, for the majority of it, she's gotten by. She's been successful with these lies because she's clearly, she's good at it. She thinks on her feet. She's really good. She adds convincing details. But that's because she never did anything this bad. And now she's pulling out all her old, familiar lying and manipulation techniques, and no one believes her. And that is why she's angry. And Al tells her, like, Letecia, chill out, man. I'm just trying to help you. I'm trying to help you and get this accurate story so we can all get out of trouble. And then he asks her the question that everybody has been waiting to find out, right? Did you kill Gannon? And she once again has the audacity to act outraged. Like, she literally cannot even believe that Al is asking her this. Like, she's been so straightforward and so honest and such a good person. It's blowing her mind that anyone could be questioning her integrity on this matter. She's gaslighting him. She tries to make him feel guilty for asking that question. She tries to make him feel like he's a bad husband because he must not have been listening to her throughout all of this, because if he had been, he wouldn't have even asked. So he must not have been listening to her. Like, he never listens to her, right? And this reminds me of James Craig when he was sending that text message to his business partner who was like telling the police that James poisoned his wife with, poisoned his wife's protein shakes. And James is like, you always do this to me. And like, you've had a history of talking about me behind my back and like professionally and personally, like, you do this to me. And like, they're bringing up stuff that doesn't matter. It's extraneous. It's just trying to make the person feel guilty for even asking.
But you just got to let me help you. But I have you told me to be straight up. I got a very straight up question, okay? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Did you kill Gannon? I need to know. I need you to answer me yes or no right now.
I killed Gannon.
Did
The
you?
answer is no. I can't believe you asked me this.
I just got to know. You had told me to be straight up. I got to know what's happening to my son.
Tell me why you would think I killed Gannon.
There's a lot of unknowns. I mean, being straight up again, you changed your story again to me for the fourth time.
No, I changed my story.
You did. This is the fourth version of the same story, okay?
Wow.
Like half of what you told me today, with the cut foot, and now he's got burned arms and picking it, and his butt's bleeding. All this stuff is new to what you told me the other day. And the other day you told me you cleaned up the area where you got raped so nobody would see it. But now you told me you just changed clothes. I just don't know what the hell's going on.
I didn't tell you. First off, you never even listened to me about anything that went on.
I did. No, you stopped because I listened to you. I listened to you, and then I went and got the guns and put them in the truck, and then I came back and me and Landon listened to you, and then I stopped and picked your story apart. So get it straight, Tisha. I listened to you, and I said, if I'm wrong about the rape, I will get on my knees and beg you for forgiveness. Did I not say that?
Yeah, but you haven't.
Exactly, because I haven't been proven wrong yet. I want the truth. If I'm wrong, if the police, no matter what they're doing, the FBI, the CBI, the CBS, whoever, Okay, if they tell me I'm wrong, I will publicly, in front of the world, get on a camera and tell you I'm sorry. But until that happens, we're going to find the truth.
How can you tell me that someone didn't I don't understand. How can you tell me that someone didn't do something to hurt me and take Gannon?
I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you it hasn't been proven one way or the other. You said you banged your head on the freaking table. Now I got to tell them to go check out the table and see if there's any blood or any of your...
You knew that. They had already asked that.
Okay, but that's the first I heard of it. You see what I'm saying?
You never would talk to me. You literally just sat here in a conversation and asked me, did I kill our child?
Yes, I did because if you say no, then I'll stop thinking that you did it. Okay?
That's horrible.
I don't know what to think. My son's blood. You're telling me his blood's all over the walls, and now you're telling me the Mexican guy that had the gun to your head or whatever took him away, and he knows him, and he could be anywhere.
Hold on. Gun. So where did you get that piece from?
That was what that. So now you got me twisting all your stories up because that was from the first time you told me the rape story that he had a gun to your head. You told me it was your gun. You told me. But you told me it was your gun, so that's fine. I'm not debating the points here, but
I said the black one.
Okay, fine. But I mean,
you know in your heart I would never hurt Gannon.
I absolutely believe that. But I'm doing everything I can to help you right now. And if you, but Tisha, listen. The thing is, if you don't, but it's not just. I asked you if you killed him. You said no, and I'm sorry. That was a hard question. But if you know anything, or you did anything, or just upset about it, we can work together, and I can help you. But I can't help you if you don't tell me anything. It's just there's so many unknowns, Tisha.
Oh my God.
I mean, did anything happen that was an accident that you're scared about?
Really?
I'm just trying to, Tisha, you know, with my Army training, I'm trained to ask all these questions to get us in a safe place, right? And that's why I took the guns out from the get-go. That's just my training kicking in.
Oh my God, I really thought, I thought out of this conversation, I really thought you were going to be supportive of me. I thought you were going to bring your family back together. And I thought that we were going to talk about everything every single day of nothing but Gannon.
That's what I'm trying to do.
For a second, you would ask me, did I kill Gannon? I can't believe that.
Well, I'm glad you said no. That gives me a lot of hope and peace.
I told him about how maybe, just maybe, you might have a brother. Maybe. We talked about, we cried about Kobe. We did a lot together.
What?
What hurt Gannon?
Okay, Tisha, let me ask you this way then. I don't believe you killed him. But did something bad happen to him and he maybe he is dead or not with us anymore and you just panicked and didn't know what to do? I mean, is there anything like that? Just any information is what I need. We can help you. I can help you get through this.
Man, it's hard. It's hard. It's very hard to listen to. Can you imagine being Al and having to deal with this crazy bitch and her antics on top of not knowing where your 11-year-old son is for weeks, being worried about him, probably thinking he's dead, and now you have to deal with her bullshit on top of it all the changing stories, all the victim mentality, all of the how dare you even ask me this, you know I would never do this. And she says something towards the end of that clip oh, Gannon and I loved him, we were talking about how we might have a brother, maybe he might have a brother. So was Letecia trying to get pregnant? Was Letecia trying to get pregnant by Al? Because she wanted a child with him. She wanted something to connect her to him in the way that he was connected to Landon with Gannon and Lena. I don't know. But either way, Letecia wants Al to listen to his heart, not his head. Believe his heart, not what he can see, not the evidence laid out in front of him. And at the end of that clip there, she's crying. And I believe that some of this crying is genuine. I believe that when she said, like, I thought from this conversation you were going to believe me and we were going to come back together and be a family. And, you know, you were just going to believe me. Like, I thought that after we talked that this would all be behind us, is what she said, basically. And I do believe that Letecia thought she'd be able to trick and convince and manipulate Al as she always had in the past. And she was frustrated that she was unable to do that because he was already very suspicious of her. And he'd already verified that so many of her stories weren't true. And you can hear, once again, even in this clip, Letecia goes back and forth between being calm and being completely unhinged. Does this mean that she's legally mentally insane? Or does it mean that she can't tell the difference between right and wrong? No, I don't think either of those things. I think it means that she's either acting upset, pretending to cry and wail because she can bring it back down really quick when she needs to, or she has no ability to regulate her emotions, and the stress of realizing that no one believes her and she's probably going to get arrested for this and she's going to have to spend the next 3 years pretending to be clinically insane is finally getting to her, right? She's going to have to literally figure out some way out of this because she's not going to go to prison, all right? She's not going to actually pay for what she did, and the stress is getting to her. So after the calls, Al Stauch was brought back to the stand, and he was asked if the range of emotion that T was displaying during those conversations was normal, and Al responded, absolutely. What does that tell you? She can't regulate her emotions. Or that, and she regularly is gaslighting people and going into this last resort, like, I'm crying, don't be mean to me, I'm a victim kind of thing, when she's not getting her way. Now, a few extraneous things I want to touch on before we wrap up today's video. One, during this call, Letecia mentioned that she knew law enforcement was searching in Douglas County for Gannon. The fact that an active search was happening in southern Douglas County was being heavily publicized in the media and on TV, and the search had been spurred by tips the El Paso County Sheriff's Office had received. Now, Letecia tells Al, basically, she knows about the search, and she sort of indicates that the police are barking up the wrong tree, as the prosecutor put it, which is weird because how would she know they were looking in the wrong place if she didn't know where Gannon was, right? Like, little things like that she lets slip sometimes. And as we know, during these initial searches, traces of Gannon's blood were found in Douglas County. On the evening of January 28th, we know that Letecia drove her own car to an area near Colorado 105 and South Perry Park Road in Douglas County. This is where law enforcement believes Letecia initially hid Gannon's body, and a board with Gannon's blood would later be found there. So it looks like she hid the suitcase with his body in it in that storage area in their house, and then she put it in her car with a board, and then she literally moved it out and probably just like left it somewhere while she took her car and got it cleaned and stuff like that. And then she came back for the suitcase and the body later, at which point she drives to Florida, tosses it over a bridge. Also, at that time, Letecia's phone was in airplane mode for several hours, but her car's telemetric system was tracking her whereabouts. We know that the police not only found Gannon's blood on that board and all over and under his bed and on his walls, but they also found his blood on the floor of the garage and on the back bumper of Letecia's car, the Tiguan, which is why she made up a story about Gannon cutting his foot on some boards and her sitting him up on her car to bandage his wounds. Even though, you know how I feel about my car, Al. You know I don't like blood near my car, but I did that because I'm a good stepmother. I'm a great, great stepmother. I loved Gannon. All these injuries that Letecia says Gannon had gotten accidentally, cuts, burns, she even mentions he's picking his own fingernails off out of nervousness. I guarantee you we find out that she did these things to him. You know, she's not saying them for no reason. She's not just saying them to, like, lie. She's saying them to give a legitimate and valid reason for why someone might see these injuries on Gannon's body if his body's found. She wants to explain that away before his body's even found, because then she can say, yeah, I told you that he picked his own fingernails off, and yeah, I told you he had burns on his arms. I told you how that happened. I guarantee you that we find out she did those things to him. I mean, at this point, I'm terrified. Are we going to find out that she tortured him by pulling his fingernails off before he died? Like, oh my God, what is this woman not capable of? And at the end of Al's testimony, he also talked about something that Letecia and her daughter Harley would do when Gannon and Elena left their Myrtle Beach home to go home to their mother, Landon. So like I said, Al said this was when they were living in South Carolina. He didn't have full custody of his children at this point. His ex-wife, Landon, still had full custody, and he would get Gannon and Lena for weekend visits. And Al said that when they would leave at the end of those weekend visits, Letecia and Harley would do what they called a happy dance, showing their excitement and joy that Gannon and Lena were gone, that they'd gone home. Now, later, you're going to hear testimony that Letecia was a good stepmother, a loving stepmother. But does that sound like something a loving stepmother would do? Does anything we know about Letecia bring to mind the picture of a loving stepmother? The answer is no. The answer is absolutely no. I don't care what you say, no. And in the next video, we're going to pick up with the rest of Letecia's trial. I know this video is super long. I'm going to stop now, wrap this up so Nev can start editing. I know it was long, but I think we covered a lot. Let me know in the comments if you like this and if you want me to do it for the rest of the trial. And don't forget to hit like if you like this video. Share if you think it's worth sharing. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. There will be another video coming out very shortly. But until then, stay kind, stay beautiful, and stay safe. And I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
Straight down, and that river runs deep. The mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name. Better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings.